Are these new?
These are CATV until I get my act together to get something just like this.
Ready.
Yeah, roll it.
Yeah, let's do it. Good evening, everybody. We're going to call the meeting, the Town of Shaftsbury regular select board meeting for Monday, March 18th, 2013 to order. Does anybody have any announcements?
Nope.
Ken?
Nope.
Carl?
No.
Margie?
I do. I'm starting to get information about remember the bike race, the Tour of the Dragons? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That will be coming up. Now the date is going to be, I'm trying to remember, I'll have to announce that next week because I don't have it in front of me. But remember that there was an incentive for the towns to staff the course with volunteers, mm-hmm. and we actually, if we can pull it off, if we got 28 volunteers.
28?
28. It's a lot. Well,
is that 14 for each day, or is
the
it 28?
remuneration is $300 per 10 volunteers per shift per day. $300 for 10. I mean, we would get, you know, so that's what we're worth. $300. Or you do $550 per 15 volunteers per shift per day. So I think we'll have to talk about how to organize this and start recruiting for a beautiful, beautiful day outside, watching all the bicyclists go by. And
it won't rain that day.
It won't rain.
No.
So that will announce the actual date of that event.
The date's May 4th.
May 4th?
May 4th. Yeah, I've got the email right here.
Yep.
What day of the week is that? Is that a Saturday?
I
Makes
think
sense.
so.
I believe it's a Saturday.
Give me a second and I can tell you.
That's too bad.
It's a Saturday. Yep.
That's Green Up Day. Saturday
Of May.
May.
They do two things. You can clean up trash and usher the bicyclers through.
Well, you could do that, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Any other announcements, Margie?
No.
Okay. Does any member of the board have a conflict of interest with anything listed on the agenda this evening?
No.
No.
Okay. Does any member of the public wish to make a comment on any item that is not listed on the agenda as a regular agenda item this evening? Okay. We're moving right along. I've had a request tonight. I need to ask this of the board, if we might do a minor reshuffling of the agenda, moving item number 9 to follow item number 5 because of the people we have in attendance this evening. Jim is here to do a presentation for us related to the mapping system. So would that be okay with the board that we adjust the agenda in that manner?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So we'll put you on right after we get done with the treasurer.
Okay.
The money guy's got to come first.
Always.
All right, Bill, the next item on the agenda is financial reports. So if you could join us up here, we'd appreciate it.
Happy to.
You have to stand up. There's no chairs.
Here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't help it.
Here. Well, we can do this. I'm very happy to stand up and talk. Have a nice chair. Oh, thank you.
We'll get another one.
I don't know. Those listers. He goes,
Look at those guys.
They grab everything. Okay. Good evening. I believe that everyone has the budget status report that was distributed on Friday. That report reflects activity through the 15th of March, Friday. So it's really, it's about 8.5 periods of financial information. On the revenue side, we're at about 92% of budget. Taxes with the delinquent tax collection and the adjustment of delinquent tax interest and our regular tax collections are about 2% over budget. The intergovernmental revenue, as you can see, is about 86% of budget. In April, we should receive the 4th state aid payment, which should be about $39,400. Okay, and that'll bring that number up. So it would be slightly over budget at that point in time. We're still waiting on the federal payment in lieu of taxes program payment, which comes in late in the fiscal year. Charges for services, as you can see, we're about 71% with the most of them are doing pretty well. The access permits at this point are over budget in terms of revenue. The pay-as-you-throw revenue is about 65% of budget. I guess if we were doing the calculation, it could be a little closer to 70, but it's not that far off. Hazardous income is about 60% of budget, and the zoning permits are about 67% of budget. Licenses, dog license activity is just really starting up. You can see we're about 31% of budget. We will expect to see that number grow considerably between now and June 30 as the licenses are renewed by dog owners. Excuse me. Fines and forfeits. Dog fines are about, they're twice what the budgeted amount is, about another $389. State police fines are at $222, and sheriff's fines are at $2,800. All of those are below the budgeted amounts, so we're looking at about 59% of budget at this point in time. Interest income is about 83% of budget, and as our cash balance is used up over or partially used up over the rest of the fiscal year, the amount of interest we earn will go down, absent some change in interest rates, which no one is upward as no one is projecting. Operating transfers in, essentially what's showing here is the employee health insurance share, and that number is approximately, it's right on budget. On the
May I suggest you pull the microphone closer to your mouth so people at home might be better, but just in case.
We can hear you really well.
There's ample opportunity for humor in there, but I'm going to avoid it tonight. On the operating transfers in, as you can see, we've transferred in approximately $168,000. We have some more transfers to make. You can see the items that have been transferred in there. We were expecting that the fire warden's truck, when that happens, we'll transfer the payment in for that, and then the offset will be an expense.
Bill, can I ask about the
Certainly.
fire equipment fund transfer and paving reserve transfer?
Okay.
Well, we didn't, I mean, we're well over budget on the fire equipment. Do we have an idea of why that is?
I think, I'll say what I think it is, and
Yeah,
Margie
go ahead.
will hopefully correct me on that. The total fire truck expenditure was expected to be financed partially out of current revenue and then partially out of fund balance. And I think the issue was in how that budget number was derived rather than the actual planning of the amount of expenditure. I believe the expenditure, when it was approved, was closer to the $84,000 figure, but not quite. That $84,000 figure includes some additional equipment and a commission.
That's the difference, that's the 4480 thereabouts.
It's a 4480, right. The 80,000 was the first year payment.
The 80,000 was what the voters had approved.
Oh, that was that whole
Yes.
glitchy thing about
Yes.
when the, okay.
We
right.
had one,
Right.
yeah,
It was a floor vote at the town meeting last year.
floor vote.
Right, and then the
Unbudgeted.
bill came in, yeah, right. Now, and what about the paving reserve transfer in? What is that all about?
Twitchell Hill.
Okay.
It's a paving
so that
project.
was
It
not budgeted,
approved.
but we took
Not
it- yeah,
budgeted,
that's right. Okay, got it.
Those are the two major items.
And I think
there.
there's another odd, there might be 2 invoices in there,
Okay. Oh. Okay,
but that's primarily Twitchell Hill.
okay.
Okay, Howard Park is slightly over budget in the revenue side, and the cemetery is about 79% of budget. So overall, as I said, we're looking at 92% of revenue to the budgeted revenue, and that budgeted revenue figure does include the prior year fund balance in the budget, which is not reflected in the actuals to avoid, excuse me, the end of this, to avoid any confusion as to what is revenue versus fund balance. On the expense side, as you can see, general government, the total administration is about 72% of budget. Going down through the various line items there, we're generally pretty consistent in terms of the expenditures as a percent of the budgeted expenditures. A few items are based upon annual payments that occur early in the year. For example, the insurance and bond, which makes, the premium is paid at the beginning of the year. Any other activities are pretty much following along. Dues and subscriptions, another one that gets front-end loaded in terms of payments. Overall, we're at 72%, as I said, of the budget for administration. Coal Hall, about 49% of budget. The big savings there is in the area of heating fuel.
Is that heating fuel, does that tie, Margie, to accounting, or does it have to do, or is that actual, that we've actually been able to tie?
What number are we? Where are we? Sorry.
We're at the heating fuel for Coal Hall. I know that we're expecting some cost savings, but seeing that it's 20%.
We are saving.
Are we pretty sure that that's pretty accurate as far as the allocation?
Yes, I think we're going to be saving about $6,300, 6,000, I'd say.
Good news.
Our consumption has gone down quite a bit.
I tell you, energy,
these panels
efficiency projects make a big difference.
It's a huge difference.
They make just...
And there's a new heating plant as well in the bill?
Well, we have...
Not here.
No, we don't have a new
station.
heating plant, but what we do have are controls on this plant, so that we don't have it at 68 degrees on the weekends when no one's here. And I mean, it makes a real difference. If people see the opportunity for Efficiency Vermont to come in and do an audit, I highly recommend it, because it saved the town a lot of money in these two buildings.
And we have the same sort of saving in firehouse heating fuel.
Yep.
And that's due to the boiler change-out.
Yeah, which was a grant, so that, that's been a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Bill.
The town clerk's category is at about 67% of budget, with most items tracking pretty closely to where they should be at this time. In the finance department, we are running approximately, with counting payroll services, close to being on budget. Auditing is running a little bit higher, but that's because the town report has now been paid, and that number is included in the auditor's category. Otherwise, expect that number will come back to being on budget by the end of the year or close to it. Delinquent tax collector, we're running a little bit higher percentage of payroll taxes, but the delinquent tax collector has had a good year in terms of collection. So because he's compensated based on the 8% fee, that larger fee collected, larger FICA expense on the part of the town. Treasurer's running right on track in terms of budget. The listers are at 50% of budget. Lister wages are, you can see, are almost less than 40% of budget. The professional services, the outside advisor, consultant, lister is running at about 80% of budget at this point in time. Between the two, the town is obviously, the listers are where they should be or slightly below that in terms of their budgeted versus actual expenses. Anything else you can see there, relatively small numbers.
How about the consultant, though, at 80% already? Is that?
Yeah, that's being offset, though, by a reduction in lister wages, so.
Yeah, we're going to come in about, I'm thinking between 60 and 70% of our lister wages for June 30th.
So overall, total finance, as you can see, is about 60% of budget, and total general government is about 67% of budget, which in the aggregate is about where it should be at this time of year. On public safety, animal control, about 50% of budget. The animal control officer typically requests payment at the end of the fiscal year. The monthly stipend is a fixed monthly amount. Any of the other very little veterinary expense this year. So that at 50% of budget. Emergency management is 70% of budget. We're not talking about large numbers. The fire department at this point is about 69% of budget. The chief's stipend has not been paid, but insurance premiums have been paid. Firehouse maintenance, communications equipment are all items that are really close. They're over their budget at this point in time. But as I said, overall, we're at 69% of budget. The air packs have been paid for this year, so that won't increase anymore.
Do we have the chief's schedules for schooling? Is he scheduled? Does anybody know?
I will find out for you, Carl.
Fire warden, as we said earlier, we're waiting for the truck, and then that amount for vehicle and equipment will appear on that line item. And we'll move the fire warden closer to budget, but still will be below budget at the end of the year. Law enforcement, we've paid $123 to the constable, and we've paid the sheriff about $12,450 in round numbers. So we're at about 68% of budget with respect to law enforcement. And public safety overall is at 58% of budget. In terms of public works, we're at about 68% of budget for highway administration at this time. There is an adjustment that will be made between the highway crew wages and the overtime to clarify some accounting matters that go between pay data and us here in the office. That will increase the overtime, decrease the crew wages.
Those will be direct changes, so
yes,
the dollars spent
yes,
will not be changed.
That's right. We're not changing total dollars anywhere. Okay, highway health insurance premium is right on track. The deductible is running below budget at this point. We're at 40% compared with a budget, $8,300 compared with a budget of $20,750. All the other categories are pretty much on track, as we'd expect them to be. Sometimes a week and one side or the other of the month can make a few percentage points difference, but overall we're running close to being on track in that particular category. Overall, 68%. On highway construction, we're at $206,000 of actual at this point in time, which represents about 83% of budget. Our winter sand, our salt is running at about 84% of budget. I know there's another set of invoices for salt in the warrant you're going to see tonight.
But I just talked this with Joan, we're still below budget. Terry and I both had a feel that we're over, but we're actually still below.
But you're getting close.
Inclusive of the invoice today. Yeah.
Okay, and pretty much, absent that, and we're heading towards the end of the winter, we would expect to see some of these categories top off, and then other expenses start to pick up. Mm-hmm. Equipment maintenance, you can see we're at about 76% of budget at this point. For all the different pieces of equipment we have, plus fuel and communications expense. The highway garage expense is well under budget at this point at about 18% of the actual.
Can I ask a
quick?
Go ahead.
No, I think position, outranks me, so go ahead.
No, you do definitely have seniority, though. The question I have is actually, it's the big variation, actually, in this classification. We had budgeted a higher amount for professional services tied to, plans that potentially would have happened related to the garage had the bond issue passed. A lot of those being professional services, obviously in that category. Is this a budget line item that we can roll over to coming years as far as, because, as we continue to move forward with the garage initiative in some form, the stuff there, the money that we've put here to finance those, had to happen this year, obviously, some of those things will continue. Is that something that we can roll into another budget as opposed to just having it fall to the wayside, so to speak?
Well, if it's a budgeted highway item, the town's required to roll over unexpended budgeted funds for highways. We can't use them to offset other expenses anywhere else. So Margie and I had a discussion about this, and I think forgive the little bit of waffling, the tentative conclusion was that yes, we could.
Okay. That would be helpful, so.
And that was money that 45,000 was coming out of the reserve fund, right?
Yeah.
45,000 of that, 60.
45 coming in. True. But when you roll it over, and you look at, that would appear in our fund balance, right? So when we are looking at what to carry forward into the 15 budget, that's when we would, no. This is 13, yeah, it would be the fiscal year 15 budget.
That's the conversation we had about it.
I know, which fiscal year that we would actually spend the money in.
I'm not quite sure I understand what's the issue if we haven't spent the money. The money is there, it gets rolled over the next year, it's still going to be there, it's not going away. Explain to me what the issue is.
Well, the issue is if it's highway funds, it can't be expended for anything but highway.
Right. And we're only planning on potentially expending it for highway.
But you're going to have to, I think, take action to dedicate whatever percentage of this, I mean, this is just me speaking, whatever that residual amount that's unspent for highway purposes only.
So is your point that we're not going to be spending that money possibly between now and 15? Is that your point?
No,
No, in the current budget that we're in right now. I mean, this ends June 30th.
Right.
And if we don't spend another, $40,000.
Yeah.
I mean, the one confusion that I have is that if we're not spending it, then we wouldn't be transferring it in from our garage reserve fund.
Right.
And if that's the case, that might eliminate the concern or the bulk of it in and of itself. Is there a requirement that once we've budgeted it to roll over, that if we don't end up spending it, that it has to be rolled from the reserve fund into the general fund, or can it remain there?
No, I think and I'll qualify this by saying I'll probably will add further comments later, but I think that if we don't spend it, we have to anticipate spending it in another budget. And since we've already approved the budget for and that's Margie's point, we've approved the budget for 14. So what budget does this show in? I think it shows in 15. We have at the end of this year an unexpended fund balance that we should recognize on our balance sheet as an unexpended fund balance designated for highway, as opposed to just a general fund balance. I think that's the mechanics of how we'll account for it.
Right. In answer to your question, Carl, if it's just in the budget, you can't carry money over. The laws we require that if you carry money over, it has to be in reserve funds or it has to be used ultimately to reduce the tax roll. So what we have to do is physically, instead of rolling this over just as money unspended, it has to be specifically placed, for lack of a better term, to handle this situation. That's all we're trying to accomplish. The money will still exist, but it has to be handled in a different way than just rolling it over as a fund balance.
Well, but if the money is the only case where it's different, isn't it, in terms of the inability to easily roll over, is if it's highway funds?
Yes, highway funds are treated separately, and budget appropriations for highway if they're not expended, have to be considered in the following year.
Right.
But in the situation we're in, we don't know if we've expended the money or not until June 30, after we pass the budget for the year that begins on July 1.
But hypothetically, if we reach an agreement on what we're going to do about the garage in fiscal year 14, which would be voting on it next March, having taken the steps that we need to take just as we've done this year, that money would probably be, at least some of it would be obligated to a contract before the end of FY14, wouldn't it? Isn't that what we're shooting for?
It would, that's a very good probability.
So we're not necessarily worrying about this money having to be rolled over to the FY15 if we will be expending part of it at least in FY14.
But you'll be expending against, I guess the expenditure will be against whatever budget has been adopted for FY14.
Well, we already adopted it, and we have the money there. So is it not then okay so far? Do we really need to do anything unless we don't do anything by?
But the money's not there. The money's in the current budget. I mean, the hope was that the community would support the bond in this current budget year, which is what we had planned on, and
that we might be expending it as we speak.
That we would be expending it now.
I understand that.
And so, if that,
I was going back to Margie's point about the FY15, when in fact it probably would be expended, hopefully, in FY14.
Yes, I think you're right in saying that. And I don't know how we make that happen.
Well, are we talking about the expenditure line item?
Yes,
or
so if we have a
transfer line?
Well, I mean, we could, I think realistically, have a bond vote if everyone chooses to go forward, say in November. And we could be expending funds that soon. We may be expending more funds. I would anticipate we will be between now and the end of this fiscal year. I don't know how much, as we proceed and, figure out how we're going to get to our bond vote and how we work this building plan into a, shape it into a plan that people will support.
The issue, one of the issues at hand, and again, I say this as a technicality, but we do our budget for this year for this line item for the 13-14 year, fiscal year 14, is $2,000. So with the idea that we thought we might very well be moving in the project, and the expenses, anything tied to that would have been part of the construction project itself. So we budgeted a very low amount in the coming budget.
In this year's budget?
Yes.
Yeah, and we may well be spending part of that.
No, you're talking about next year.
No, I'm talking the 14.
Oh, next year.
14, 15, yeah.
14.
Yeah, he's talking about next year.
We
We have the bulk of it. We have 60,000 in this year's,
In the-
with
in the 13
45 of
budget.
that coming in from
I
our
If
see.
we
reserve.
allocated the money to the reserve fund, it can't just stay in the reserve fund, is what you're saying?
Well, that was what I was asking.
Yeah, that's kind of my point, is that
Because
seeing
it
we're not incurring the expenses now, does it have to come out of the reserve fund?
Well,
or-
I'm pretty sure that if the voters vote to put something in a reserve fund, that it's in that reserve fund. I mean, think about when we put stuff in the reserve fund for highway equipment. We don't have to buy that equipment that year. The theory behind a lot of these reserve funds is to put away $10,000 every year for so many years so that we can make the purchase. I'm pretty sure that if you're in the reserve fund, you're safe.
Yes, I think on the cash side of it, you're correct. The question is, you budgeted a transfer in from the reserve fund, you budgeted an expenditure out. So that's the cash flow on that.
5,000 is out of the reserve fund right now. I think that's the point.
Well,
whether we can put it back in.
We're actually only bringing in 45. We were budgeting, $15,000 in that line item.
To tax for 50.
In terms of raising additional funds through this budget. We had 45 that we were moving in. We were anticipating the costs were going to be about 60. So we had 15, and then we were pulling 45 in. And you know, I don't know that this isn't a firm actual, that number's going to change. And we're probably going to come closer to the $15,000, which got us our wastewater permit and the conceptual design and all of that. So the question is, you know, how much, so that's 15 there. We still don't need the 45, but we may be moving forward in intervals, you know, like, you know, a small piece out to somebody to, again, tweak the numbers and the size of it, and I don't know how much all of that is going to cost us.
Well, you're talking about professional services.
Yeah. So, I mean, that professional service line, we may end up expending, you know,
I was estimating
35,000.
Yeah, 30 by June 30th.
To try to get us
As far as the
closer
question,
to a bond vote again.
as far as the question with moving the money goes, the legality of it, should we just ask VLCT or?
Well, I think we're leaning on Bill to work with, or to determine the proper way to address it, just so that we do it realistically. It's how we just need to do it in the way that meets the legal requirements. I think we're all in agreement that we need to put it where it needs to be so that it can be used for the purpose that we desired. It's just that we wanted to confirm that there is a functionality to do that so that it meets the state requirements for how those funds are handled.
So until we have that feedback, there's nothing more we can figure with that tonight then?
Well, and until we know, frankly, how much of a surplus we have in that line item. I mean, you know, I don't think we're there yet until June 30th.
That's right. There are two pieces to this. One is the funds that will be used to pay for this item, and the other is the budgeted expenditure. And the rule about if you budget appropriate funds to be spent on highway, they cannot be used for any other purpose. They must be, if they're not spent in this year, they have to be spent in another year on highway. And how that plays with this fact that this is funded with a reserve fund that was specifically set up for that purpose is really the question. Does the rule that you have to carry over unused highway expenditures to highway in future years apply to an item like this? I think the answer is yes, but
No, I understand that. I was just saying, it doesn't sound like we're gonna get any further with it.
No, we don't. We're not gonna solve that tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are you finished then?
On this topic, yes.
So I just have a question. Bill, I don't think you can answer this, but I think Margie can. Under equipment maintenance, that international 2013 tandem, is that, I mean, we budgeted $1,000 and we're at $4,100. Is that
Apparently, carbide blades, and also there were repair bills on the old truck before we traded it. And this is the same account.
So, okay.
So you've got
$1,200.
$1,200.
I remember we had to do something and it was.
30 of that $3,900 expense, $1,200 is for the new truck for carbide blades.
Okay.
So the remaining, the prior $1,700 is for the old truck that we traded.
I remember when we had to do that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That helps.
That answers that question.
Yep.
Anything else before we let Bill continue? On this, any more that I should say on this classification? Okay, Bill.
Okay. Solid waste facility is at about 64% of budget at this point. And as you can see by looking down through the categories where each of the line items are, the management contract is essentially on track because it's a fixed amount as we go right through this. Okay, street lights, it's on budget. The park, again, is slightly below budget, but probably by the end of the year will be on budget. Cemetery expenditures are below budget at this point. Total public works, we're right on budget, 67%, 68%. Planning and Development Review Board is about 37% of budget. The planning is at about 67%, so overall planning and development, we're at 56% of budget. With respect to the community appropriations, with the exception of the NeighborWorks of Vermont appropriation, we are close to being on budget. The Veterans Memorial should be down in transfers to reserves, and we will reclassify that. So if you take that out of the equation, we're right on track. We've satisfied all the community appropriations at this point. The county tax has been paid. This year we're able to pay it in 2 installments. The transfers to reserves have not yet been made. They will be made by the end of this month. And then the debt service expenditures have been made, and they're at about 103% of budget. So overall, we're looking at total expenditures that are about 71% of budget at this point. However, that reflects some items, as we said, as we're going through this, that are front-end loaded, and and things like insurance and the winter expenses are now pretty much, will be in here probably by the end of March, and we'll be looking at the remainder of the year.
Great.
And we expect that next time we will have a cash projection for you to show the cash flow for the rest of the year and where we think we'll come out at the end of the year.
So all in all, it appears that we're right on target.
Seems to be right at this point. I mean, without any unusual occurrences, we're tracking budget pretty well here.
Great. That looks great, Bill.
Anything else, Bill, from your side?
At the moment, no. Nothing else to report.
Any members of the board have any questions for Bill while we have him at the table here?
Report, Bill.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, for any of those that just came into the room here after the initial part of the meeting, the board has agreed to take an item out of order tonight. We have a special guest here tonight. Jim is here to talk to us about, with the listers, about a new opportunity related to parcel mapping, and he's going to do a little bit of a demonstration for us. So if you could join us, Jim, listers.
Now, we can't project,
Want your chair back?
so
No, I'll take this one, but you
I think
can.
people can
Larry
have
can
to come around the table, actually.
Do
Unfortunately,
you want to
my,
join us? You want to join us up here too?
He's gonna do all the talking.
I thought Larry was going to do all the talking.
Has everybody met Jim Boyle?
I have.
Jim, have you met
Hi, how are
Carl
you?
Corman and Billy Obenauer and Ken, Sandra?
Since I've joined working down here, we've been talking about putting a mapping program together that would take us to take the town to the next step in having an online system. And I have done this with 3 other communities, and I've found that the company that I'm working with has done a great job for us, and with some time and effort, it's working out quite well. And it's something that I think, if you want to move in this direction, I think it'll be a great help to the community. It'll allow residents as well as outside people access to the tax maps. It'll allow you to get assessing information online. You'll be able to pick up zoning information. We may coordinate with the zoning administrator to have the permits up online. So there's a number of things that we can do as we go forward with it. I had hoped to have a better projection system, but I missed a part. So I've got it up on my computer, and it's a company called Cartographic Associates. There's 2 cartographics that work in Vermont. One is Cartographic Technology, which is based over in Putney. Mm-hmm. And they work off of a CD primarily, which is searchable but not available online. And it's you do it once a year, it's fixed, You can't update it except on an annual basis. This product can be updated on a monthly basis with new names and owners and information as we go forward. So it's a fairly flexible setup, and it's something that, you know, Margie and I have been talking about, as well as Larry and Deanie, and we think it will make sense for the town if you want to move forward in this direction.
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
I'm just, you had mentioned that so that residents can access listers' information online.
That's correct.
So what exactly would they be able to access?
They'll be able to get it'll not be the same property record card that they could come in and get here, but it'll be similar information. It'll just be in a different format. They'll be able to get their sketch. They'll be able to print a copy of their tax map. And then there's some various add-ons that they could work with while they're online. You can get contours, again, as I said, zoning. If you have any fire districts or something, that can also be put on there. Any digitized mapping that has been done by it's not Rockingham, it's Brattleboro? I mean,
Bennington Regional.
Bennington Regional will be able to be uploaded into the system. It'll work on an aerial photo as well as Bing, so you can see the properties. If there's concern by an individual of privacy, we can take them out of the system so that you would not be able to
You can opt out?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
You can opt out.
A resident could opt out?
Individual, yes.
But
Property
the
owner.
information's public record though, right?
It is, but there are some, so far in the 3 towns I'm working in, have not had anybody ask to be opt-out, but there are some people who might be concerned about the privacy and would want to opt out.
Privacy of the photo of their property, or what?
Yes, you'll have a picture of the house.
Is it kind of like a Google Earth type thing, if we're any of you that are familiar with that, or is it?
The Bing part of it is basically like the Google Earth. You can see and move around look at different properties. So overlay on the property you're looking at, and then you can search around with it, but it won't follow the map exactly.
Okay. Bill?
How does the information get in there if it's not the same as the Lister card? Is this double work to get that inputted, or is it exported from the Lister card system, or?
Yeah, it's exported from the Lister's card into cartographics format that they use. So it'll take the number of bathrooms, the square footage, and all that information will be extracted out automatically.
Okay.
And as we make changes to the card as of April 1st.
You're doing that in CAMA, right?
Yeah, in the CAMA system. Once the camera's updated, we can then, at the end of the period when we lodge the grand list, we can upload any changes to the property at that point in time.
So do residents actually have access to the Lister card?
No, they'll have access to this
I don't know what
data. You'll have the access to
the same data that's on the Lister card?
Right, it's just being a different format.
Okay, so you can go and you can see what the listers are listing your square footage as, and essentially getting the same information in a different form from
It just won't look the same as our official Lister.
But the information on it's exact.
Carl?
I'm curious when you said it'll be uploaded automatically from the Lister's card. Is the program set to read any type of information on any card? Because I haven't looked at a Lister's card in a very, very long time. I'm assuming that it may well be handwritten and things of that sort. I'm familiar with uploading notes and things to a grand database, but that's always done with a human being involved to transfer it.
I guess
that gets expensive.
It is, but I mean, I would be doing it, or one of the listers would be updating that information, which then would be sent up to it's a cloud-based system, and it'll then transfer up to their
Okay,
database.
so our listers would have to actually physically upload it?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a very simple process, quite honestly. And one of the nice things with the mapping program that we have versus the paper is that some of the maps are very hard to find parcels because they're not in an order or a good sequence. So cutting down time of trying to find a parcel will be dramatically reduced because you can zero in on that particular parcel.
Ken?
So what are you doing? You're like numbering each parcel, or I don't?
they'll carry the same parcel ID, and that will be the key, is to find, you can find it by name, address, or the parcel ID.
Okay.
And it will, if you put in a parcel, and I can show you because I got one up here, you put in the parcel ID, it'll go to that parcel, and it'll bring up a picture of the property and give you access to the sketch and to the,
How detailed are these pictures? If you're sitting there reading the paper.
Why don't we start your
Yeah, why
little presentation?
Why don't you want to go down
We're
in the
gonna-
middle and just kind of,
yeah, I can do that actually with this one because it's charged now.
okay.
I mean, I'm not sure why you're reading the paper over my shoulder.
No, I won't do that. See if I can work this way. This is Dover, Vermont, which is one that we're just finishing up. And I just happened to pick up, I'm gonna have to work this way, I guess. If I want to put in a parcel ID, let me just grab one off my sheet. I could put in the parcel ID there, and I can go down to my, and click on, am I up and running? Did I lose my internet connection? Should still be connected. Okay. So that brings up the parcel ID and the owner's name. I then click on that, and that'll bring in this parcel. And you can see here I have a picture of the house. And this would be, if I go out a little bit, I can pick up the street and any of the properties around it.
What's the benefit of having the picture of the house online?
So we know exactly what house we've got, because, you know,
Who's we?
Whoever's looking.
whoever's looking at it. In other words, if you have an appraiser coming in, if you have someone doing whatever kind of work they're doing, an insurance, someone's coming in to look at a house to do measuring for insurance purposes, they want to make sure they're in the right house.
What, are you suggesting that this would be perfected enough that it could be used by those people without having to come in and check the records? No, so they'd have to come in and check the records anyway.
They should come in, at least, this is a
So that's,
tool.
it gets me back to my point, what do you need a picture of the house for necessarily? Because whoever's going to use it for business purposes would be coming in and checking it anyway.
I don't think some of the cards that we do give out do not have a picture. But typically, you would get a picture of the property, so at least you have zero in on the property you're looking at.
My only concern for raising that point is that once it's online, anybody can get a hold of it. And we've had a rash of burglaries in Shaftsbury, as I'm sure you know. And it would seem very easy for someone to get online and take a look at what looks like a nice big rich man's house.
I understand the point. There again, if you go to this company and you look at some of the towns that they are providing information on, the houses are vastly, on the high end.
That doesn't
Doesn't mean it can't happen.
minimize my point. Means that they're doing it.
I would say this, Carl, just as to possibly, I shouldn't say allay the fear, because it's still the same issue.
I'm not saying it's my fear, I'm saying it might be the public's fear, and I think it'd be a reasonable fear.
You can pull up that same information with this, other than that tax ID information, but as far as pictures of property, I have the Google Earth application that I use on a daily basis, and you can pull up, so you're right down on the street looking in the front door.
Yeah, I have that too, but I have a 700-foot driveway that Google Earth does not drive up with their Google mobile to take a picture of my house.
They see it from the road.
And I've looked at my house and you can't see it. I suspect there are a number of houses in Shaftsbury. I'm only throwing out the point, I don't know whether I see the essentiality of that element of the program. But
Well,
that's not to say the program isn't good.
No, and that if someone had a problem with that, that'd be an opt-out.
That's just a feature you turn on and off.
You just take the picture out.
Right.
Right.
So-
But in terms of, Jim, the other, and I can't see far enough to see what other options are available there, how would you get, for instance, the kind of dimensions you were talking about on
As
the
far as-
home, or the data that,
The sketch?
6 bathrooms, or that house looks like it might have 6 bathrooms, that's the only.
It has an x-ray feature.
This is actually,
Maybe it's looks big.
it's actually a small cake.
Okay.
Just trying to get down to the picture below it is you have a building sketch.
Okay, there we go.
This is printable.
Yep, yep.
The map is also printable. And here's what they use as their standard property record card. Why didn't it come up? Come on. There it is.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yep.
Can you maximize that one a little bit, that property card, just,
See if we can get it a little bit.
there we go.
I would think that this sort of information, we went through a reappraisal a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now.
Yes.
And people who had concerns about the appraised value of their home had to come in here and make an appointment with the listers and guess that maybe their neighbor's house was equivalent to theirs, and then be told, well, actually, you have another 800 square feet than your neighbor. And I mean, this sort of thing, I think, can be really valuable in that kind of a process for residents.
Can be. And again, if you're doing, with this, if the zoning administrator has someone come in and they're not sure of the zone, we can, get the glasses back on again. You have a zoning map that can be overlaid right on top of what you've got.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So, and if you have some contour issues, you can pull that up. So there are a number of features that this would be applicable to not just the lister's office, but other departments within the town.
Oh, we have one question. Michael, do you have a?
Yeah, I guess a common question of Michael Gardner, who everybody doesn't know me, unfortunately, I was hoping to alleviate Carl's concern, but that ship has already sailed. The Vermont GIS database has already done all the parcel mapping, including aerial photos for Shaftsbury, including zoning, including contours, including use value appraisal. I mean, there's, I think, 85 or 90 overlays. So just with the Vermont GIS system, I mean, I can find your property, find out what it looks like, use Google Earth, and see how many cars are in your parking lot and what you're having for breakfast. So unfortunately, that ship unfortunately has sailed for residents and their privacy concerns, which is unfortunate. But that leads me to my second question. Since all that work has already been done by the state of Vermont, would it be possible to create an overlay for the existing GIS system that provides the lister card information? It just seems crazy to for us to pay for something that's already done.
I don't know enough about that, the question you're asking. I know that we will use the information from the state, such as the aerials, or the typical use.
Well, I mean, everything you've said, with the exception of lister card information, is 100% done. Vermont GIS updated their website February 1st.
But they don't have our individual tax maps on there.
I guess you may not have the tax maps, but I can zoom in and print off every parcel in Shaftsbury. Just to create, I'm just saying, is the company that you're suggesting we work with, I mean, are they the ones that provided the information to the state? I just don't want to pay for any redundancy.
No, I understand
I don't either.
That's a question.
We don't either. Yeah.
I mean, it's great technology, and as Larry knows, I think a searchable database would be a big asset for the town.
I don't know that.
I'm concerned about that cost.
That's something we'd have to check into.
Yep.
I'd like to respond, Michael. I'm very familiar with Google Earth and what you're saying, but Vermont GIS does not come up anybody's driveway and take a photograph of the house.
Oh,
I'll grant you that if you're living perhaps on a street and you want to get the street view from Google Earth, and if they happen gone by, they can take a look through your window. But there are a lot of houses in Shaftsbury that are removed from the street view, so that's all I'm talking about, a nice, beautiful color picture of the front of your home. A vertical picture, I know, certainly, and they can maybe see the number of cars, but they do not have photographs of your home, except maybe the roof.
But someone can come in here and get a copy of our listed.
Absolutely.
And we'll get a picture.
I'm only talking about a photograph of the house.
Yeah. But the lister card will have a photograph of it.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that, because if somebody wants to come in and take a look at the listers, there's going to be somebody coming in and seeing who they are, why they're here, making record, hopefully, of what they're looking at, or at least recall who they are in their log. And we know that, and burglars don't typically walk into places, small towns at least, and start looking through cards with complete abandon. So that's my only point.
You don't know.
We wouldn't know, though.
You wouldn't know.
That's true, but you would have seen who they are.
Maybe, yeah.
We give you guys a lot of credit for being really observant.
Maybe more.
Okay.
Anyway, that I think we just want to do a really brief display of some of the interactive features. I think what we need to do is still a little more research on VGIS at the state level versus the vendor that is sort of the favorite of the listers at this time to figure out if that's going to impact the cost estimates that we have to date.
Well, one of the other things we want to consider with that is while the website's being developed, if we have this in place before the website's done, we could probably get the cost of it into our initial website setup. If it's after the fact, then we're going to pay more for that. I don't know how long it's going to take to get that done, but
This will be actually done through a link that you go online. If I can give you the online site, and there are probably 150 towns listed that you can go in and look at their information and search around.
So it would be actually a link to another site, is what I'm saying, as opposed to maybe embedded in ours.
So it's just like a 15-minute add-on to the website then at most?
Yeah, just a
It's a hyperlink, presumably.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay.
There was one other question, and I think kind of leads to one of the reasons we're looking at this. The current vendor that we do our mapping with, and we've worked with them for a number of years, one of the areas of contention has been ownership of the data. That's the backbone of the whole product. That vendor has indicated that they feel that they own the data. There's been arguments on this side that go back to years before I was involved that we've thought it was the other way around. A question that Carl posed last week is the one, has that matter been resolved at all or discussed further? And two, if the vendor is of the opinion that it is theirs and we don't agree, is there any fruit potentially in pursuing the question from a legal standpoint?
That I'm going to pass to Margie, because she, at the moment, all I know is that the company that I deal with, the data will be owned by the town. And you can do it.
Definitely, that's the contract.
Going forward, yes.
Right.
All right.
Do we have a price on this, on what this
We
would cost
have,
to move?
I can give you a magnitude now, but I don't have anything yet.
Hold on,
in writing.
that's a good question, because I do want to know that as well, but I also, Margie, do we have any insight into the question?
I have no contract. Nobody has a contract with the prior vendor. And to get what he says is our data, he wants to back charge us to work he did in the 1990s.
What kind of dollar amount is that he's talking about?
Well, $5,000 to $7,000. I mean, it's going to be, and so that's why we're looking at, basically, he's just created what's called an AutoCAD file. It's a flat file, really, to give you your paper maps. And as I understand it, we would have to digitize those maps regardless to start building the GIS that we want. But I would have to now, having heard Mike Gardner, I'd like to call, I think we got to call the Vermont GIS folks and tell them of our situation, and so that I just want to make sure we don't have any redundant costs.
No, I agree.
The cost, the reason it came to the board table is that we really have only ever budgeted about $1,800 a year and our costs have been in the magnitude of $2,000 a year, and we get paper maps. We have no GIS, no interactive capabilities whatsoever. We're not on the web site, we're not in the cloud, whatever. The biggest setup fee is going to be digitizing, if we have to, the data. And I'm getting a sense that that's between, let's say, a $5,000 to $7,000, $7,200 initial cost impact. And
that would be getting the maps that if we got, the maps we have now, digitizing those so that we could begin using them interactively.
And then what you do is you pay a maintenance fee of about $1,200 a year, and then you pay $1,800 a year for the access to their query-based online system. So the ongoing costs are going to be in the realm of $3,000 a year.
And the digitizing you're talking about, are you talking about digitizing the map or digitizing the information on the lister's cards? Uploading that?
What you do is you have to digitize your maps first. You have to get what are called your shape files. Right. All right? Lines that are all connected, those become your shape files. Then to those shape files, you can create whatever tags you want of text, pictures. The CAMA data would come into the GIS, and so you start building it vertically, your layers.
But you didn't include the cost to pay the listers to upload that data.
That's part of it. That's in reality, that's a fairly simple part of the process of getting our data in there.
I realize it's easy to get, just upload, but there's a lot of it to upload.
Well, we'll just export files to the mapping company, and they will just transfer that data in.
Yeah, the data, most of the data exists in
the format that you can just upload it?
Mm-hmm.
They have to work with it, but yes, we basically upload it. We export our CAMA files and our and the NIMRIC, which is the recording part of that. We upload that to them, and then they use that to build the database.
Okay. Oh, I understood before you said the listers would upload this stuff, so I presume it was individual, one parcel after the other.
The listers update the information on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah, I understand that, but I was talking from here into this proposed system.
So the other consideration was that if the Board of Listers wanted to move ahead with this, and we start investing now into the future, how are we going to make up this deficit in the funds that are needed to support this? And you obviously can budget for it in future years and go at it that way, or several other towns use the appraisal reserve funds towards this. And that's a legal, we have the authority to do that. Property Evaluation and Review has said yes. And our own listers have agreed that might be an option to consider.
I mean, when I look at your ongoing annual costs, essentially that's what we've just budgeted $3,000 in next year's budget for tax maps. And I'm assuming that's what we get. That would cover the maintenance. And so if we're looking at $5,000 to $7,200, I mean, I would absolutely agree that the reappraisal fund, we're getting the equivalent of almost, I think last time I checked, it was over $14,000 a year from the state, 14.5 or something based on the parcels that we have, towards maintenance of the grand list. And this seems to be a very appropriate project to help us maintain the grand list in a way that, frankly, I think makes it very accessible to the community.
Which is a topic that we've discussed, is making the information more accessible.
Yeah.
Bill?
I just want to clarify, and I think Karen just answered my question. So the $3,000 a year that we would roughly pay to maintain this takes the place of what we're budgeting for digitized maps today?
Yeah, I believe that to be accurate.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, what's the advantage of this over your current system as far as, is it worth the extra money to do it?
I'm gonna defer to Jim and to Larry to.
Absolutely, Kenny.
Okay, well, I mean, it's you guys, that's your thing, and I'm not gonna...
No, it gives us a lot of advantages. Karen brought up one. If people want to do searches on their own,
Yeah.
associated properties, lets them make an online comparison. Grievance day, for example, there's a lot of folks that can prepare their case a lot better if they've got that information in its current, so that they are aware of what the neighborhood costs are. There's, in researching, trying to pull up names that go with cards, trying to pull up the appropriate properties. We spend a lot of time going back and forth between the cards and the maps. Right. Because the maps aren't necessarily laid out in a good order. So there are some real advantages.
Right, well, I mean, I understand that a lot of that kind of lister stuff is over my head a little bit.
So Larry, to your point there, the listers might actually end up billing fewer hours if we have this system in place, because they could.
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
But how many?
Yeah. No, I understand that. I just wanted to.
It should make it could conceivably, or should make your life easier.
Definitely.
But Jim will have additional time. So I want to look at that, we're trying to nail that down.
But also, wouldn't it be beneficial for people in the town that want to sell or buy homes, that their real estate agents can easily determine what a better value of their property is without having to kind of take out a few things, spend a little time here, and they can spend the time in their office and decide whether or not a home is worth more money to somebody that wants to sell it, or less money to somebody that wants to buy it with more accuracy?
Well, that's part of it, and I think that, if someone's looking at the insurance companies need this information to come up, provide reasonable quotes for your property insurance, so that's another use that would come in handy. And I think because the lister office is really only manned technically Monday and Wednesday, if nobody's here, they can't get the information. Here they can sit at home and get it. And then when they come in, if they need questions answered, they're going to be more informed because they have the basis to go forward with. And I think the attorneys will start to use it, and again, the real estate people will be thrilled to have it.
I knew I had a couple questions. Barry?
Well, you sort of answered that, but the point that Michael brought up about this GIS, the state mapping, and then Carl had, is there any redundancy here? Is there something that is more? Does this program give us more than people could get from the state?
Barry, I've been trying to get the state's info the entire time we've been having this discussion, and it's definitely not easy to find, I can tell you that much.
So that may be the answer to the question. Mitch?
Oh yeah, I was curious, is there any, seeing how when a person comes into Lister today, there's a kind of a little record of it, is there any sort of logging of access to these different properties in case for, like Carl said, for people looking for properties? Or is that just deemed unnecessary? I mean, like a logging feature for access?
It was explained to us that there would definitely be a trail within however those things are done. Okay. That there would be a record of somebody accessing that information, and forensically how they would retrieve that if need be is way beyond where I think we are, but we're told that it's in there.
Okay. Every time that you access a website, there is a method for
it will track
that it's being tracked somewhere, and there are ways to find it.
Like I couldn't, but we couldn't, or an individual property owner couldn't go out and look and say who accessed.
I think it's much more complex than that.
Yeah, someone went to the police and said.
Mike?
I just had a quick question. There's already a company, I think it's like VermontPropertyTaxSearch.com or something, where you can pull up grand list valuations by last name and by town, and I think also by parcel ID. It's pretty bare bones information, and I'm not sure where they're pulling the data. I'm assuming they're getting the data from the Vermont Tax Department and like CCOM and Limited, converting it to Excel and creating a searchable database. Are any of these companies affiliated with that company? Are you aware of it? And again, is this maybe a situation where we can work with a company that already has 50% of our information uploaded and available, just to provide them with bathroom square footage? And the database that currently exists doesn't have any photos.
I don't think their data has anything more than property address and assessments and probably acreage.
Yeah, and the assessments aren't even right.
Yeah,
But it's
so,
just grand list value, there's
There-
a lot of blank spaces, you
Yeah.
know, so I just figured I'd ask the question.
yeah, I don't know, there are a number of companies that are playing with that stuff, but the accuracy level is not that great. At least we know with the site we're preparing is that it's the most accurate information that's available at the time.
I'm sorry.
I was just following up what Mitch was saying relative to that tracing access. Are you saying that we would know the way an ISP knows that you've looked at a website, or will people log into the system in order to gain access?
We're going to have to ask that of
Yeah,
My
Franco,
assumption was the former.
ISP.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
ISP.
Yeah.
Well, just as you're all aware, that's nowhere near the same as somebody coming in and asking Larry
No.
to look at something. because,
Not at all.
No.
I turn my modem on and off every night, so they don't know my IP address. And there are any number of ways of accessing the website without being personally identified. I'm not saying that's necessary, I just didn't want you to think that somebody accesses the website and we'll know who looked at that property, we won't.
One quick question, Jim. How many towns did you say have this implemented at this point? Did you?
Well, this company
Reference that?
works in Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and I would say, I'm just guessing there's well over 100 towns and more. And you've got some high-end towns in the Boston area. You've got Edgartown on the Vineyard, you've got Lincoln, Concord, I think Concord, but anyway, Lincoln, Mass. So there's a number of large towns that are doing it. And it's just, you can sit and go to California and do the same thing. You can look what's going on out there just as well as you can next door.
just did it.
Okay, so as I'm sorry, did you have more questions?
No, I'm just sighing.
Oh. Any other questions from the board at this moment? As I'm understanding this, if I've been keeping score, that we have a little bit more, there's a couple of homework items that we, I think, want to address before we proceed further. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
So from that standpoint, then I guess we as the board don't have an action item as of this moment?
Correct.
Okay. So, Lister's and Margie and work together.
I think we have
Answer a couple of questions and then we'll revisit it once you.
I think we have a sense that the idea of supplementing with reserve funds for the startup
Can I
cost.
ask one last question? What's a time frame for purposes of the listers that you'd like to have this in place if we were to decide to go with it?
Well, we'd initiate it after the end of this year. We'd start, the vendor isn't prepared to take it on much before then.
This year fiscal, this year calendar?
June 30th.
Yeah, sometime after this.
After June 30th.
And it might run 18 months to get it totally.
I would hope within 12 months we'll have it pretty well up and going, but it's like anything else, you start getting into it and there's going to be some work that has to be done, and we can get it up online as soon as possible. You want to get it as best shape as you can. And I don't know how the integration is going to be from the maps to our grant list and how that's all going to translate.
My only point was it's not an event that you'd like to have this thing in place in order to make use of for that event.
It's like having with annual listers, the grand list updates.
No. No, I think it's just a matter of when we can get it done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bill?
So if the vendor is not prepared to start taking it on until, say, sometime after June 30th, are we realistically looking at the first year having to allocate money towards this while also allocating money towards maps and whatnot through our current vendor?
My suggestion is we hold with the existing maps we have. We'll make the changes as we go along and work with those for the year in the transition, because it doesn't make any sense to be good money chasing bad, so to speak. So my recommendation would be just hold tight. One of the towns I just finished was Dover. We were 7 years out from the last update. And so
To the hard copy.
from the hard copy into the online system. And it took me probably 8 months once we launched it to get a whole bunch of change orders in and so forth in. So it takes time. The maps are closer to that, but there are some issues that we do have to deal with. And the primarily is the fact that the state requires us to merge properties for tax purposes, and we've got to be able to identify those because that works off a different system, and when you pull them up.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, one question for you.
Yes.
May I make the suggestion that we do set a date to revisit this and that we encourage the public to send us any detailed ideas that they have about other alternatives available before then, so that when we revisit it, we're not coming back to things for the first time?
That's a very good suggestion. Thank you. We will do that. When can we schedule you to come back again? Listers, you want to set a target date? Our next meeting is
April 1st?
And then there will be another one following 2 weeks later. Would either 2 or 4 weeks work?
It's really up to Margie at this point, because she's gonna do the.
Yeah.
I'll be well, I think I'm coming back to you all. We're going to have to work as a group again.
Yeah, okay.
So that because I don't have the lingo.
How about, should we make it for 4 weeks?
But I think we ought to do it further.
So I think we need to talk to Franco and pose this question about the Vermont.
And I want to talk to the VGIS people.
Yeah.
And, okay.
And per Bill's suggestion.
So second meeting in April.
And per Bill's suggestion, if there are members of the public that are watching that have any specific questions or ideas or suggestions that might become involved in this project, assuming we're moving forward with it, please submit those to Margie or to the listers directly, and we will incorporate those into the next conversation or plans as we move forward. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, all of you.
Thank you,
Jim,
for coming out tonight.
Terrific
No problem.
project.
Appreciate it.
For bumping this up.
Yes.
Out without.
Craig, what date did you decide to take this up?
Second meeting in April.
The second meeting in April, which is
So we have the
15th.
15th.
April 15th.
Tax due date.
All right. The next item on our agenda tonight is the bid award for cemetery mowing. I'm going to let Margie lead the conversation on this one.
Okay.
Based on the information that we did get from her in our packet and based off the review of the cemetery committee.
Well, after looking over all the bids pretty carefully, it looks to the cemetery committee and to me that we really only have 2 complete bids. We were missing insurance information, or we were missing licensing information. We had asked for a driver's license, or we were missing levels of insurance. So they were underinsured. So if you agree with me, I think you need to talk about that. It appears that we have 2 complete bids, Green Mountain Boys Landscaping, for a 1-year bid of $12,000 and a 2-year extension for $24,000 or $12,000 a year. They are from Wells, Vermont, which is north of Paulet on Route 30. And then the other complete bid is Sycamore Landscaping at $14,000 a year. And the 2-year extension would be $28,000 for 2 years. So,
Any comment, the board, have you all had a chance to review the documents and the bids?
I did have one piece of, somebody, or 1 or 2 people on the committee were wondering, having looked at the equipment list from the folks in Rupert, whether they had the sufficient equipment.
Did we have a
To do the
recommendation from the cemetery committee?
Yes, the Sycamore Landscaping.
I'd like to make a note that based on my recollection, I hope it's correct, when our last review of this service contract was done, and we had a more limited kind of review process, focusing primarily on price. And I believe that this solicitation offered the board to consider factors other than price. which I think is very important in reviewing this particular offer. And I think that also we're dealing with as we were before, but now with different variables that we can consider, we're dealing with a subject that is both very, very close to the hearts of the townspeople and very sensitive to the townspeople, because we have their relatives that are there, and regardless of whether something is done very well or just good enough, makes a difference here.
Right.
So we're talking about quality. Sycamore Landscaping has an excellent reputation. I would also note that from my own personal experience, I have been aware that the lack of that contract last time, because of the more limited review process, had an impact on hiring locally within town by that company, where there were jobs that were then perhaps available to kids from the town during the summer to assist. They were no longer able to be hired because of the lack of that substantial contract. For those reasons alone, I believe it would be in the town's best interest, and definitely supported by the town, to go with a known, respected, albeit more expensive option in this case, and following the recommendation of the Cemetery Committee. And I would also add that if the board decides to go with that choice, in order to, and because of the proven reputation of this contractor, and to avoid issues like this later, that the contract option be increased from 2 years to 3 years. That's my 2 cents.
The extension would be a 3-year extension
So
for a
it'd
total
actually
of
be a
4?
4-year contract altogether, 1 year with
Okay.
1-year options for the 3 following years.
All right. Thank you, Carl. Bill, any questions or comments?
I'm just looking through the RFP here, because I don't recall if we set an actual amount that we were giving preference to local bidders. I'm just trying.
We were not.
We don't
Not
have,
giving
We didn't say
amount.
that.
We did not do that.
We didn't say that.
We did not do that.
Did not do that, no.
Okay, so what we're talking about, that the cemetery committee has recommended giving it to Sycamore. And, you know, I think for every reason that you said, Carl, there's a lot that makes sense about that. But I worry about the integrity of the bid process if we're going to pay 15% more for a local bidder without specifying in our RFP that that's what we're going to do.
Well, again, if I may again, the point is that our RFP did not identify price as the principal basis for the award. It had various other ones. I'm trying to pull it up myself. I know we had several factors that were identified.
we have several factors.
Do you remember off the top of your
Do you have a copy of that quickly? I can't seem to pull that up quickly.
You know, I thought I did.
Looking for the bid form right here?
I think it,
No, not the bid form.
have it
I'm looking for the solicitation. Margie sent
online.
out the actual solicitation.
I have it down, on my,
Let me see if I can pull it up.
down to,
Okay,
I
while
don't
you guys
have
are
my
looking for
paper
that,
copy.
Karen, do you?
You know, I think, I'm not sure why we're on this wording that we have to say something in a bid document that,
I know where it is.
you know, if we don't say in it that preference will be given to a local, that somehow we're going against some policy out there. Quite honestly, the fact that Sycamore Landscaping is a local firm, I think, would be icing on the cake for the town. For me, Sycamore Landscaping has proven themselves over, you know, a number of years, 3 or 4 years that they had the contract. They do quality work, and I think we're getting caught in this thing of, because they're local, we're not being fair to other people who may be bidding on the job. You know, last year the board decided to go with the low bidder. We clearly, almost from the get-go, had major problems. And, you know, again, for me, if Sycamore Landscaping was from Arlington, I would want them to be mowing our cemeteries, because they have, you know, they clearly have
Here it is.
a
I got
lot
it.
of concern
I got it.
around, you know, how to perform this kind of work. There's a respect for what they're doing.
And the quality of work that they had they previously had the contract, the quality of the work that they performed during that time consistently met the standards. And that, quite frankly, maybe to the detriment of the incumbent contract holder, the standards were set really high. And,
well, they were, yeah.
So,
and I think you also, you know, I know that, I'm pretty sure when these bids go in the paper, it says that
I have the wording right here.
Town is not bound. You read the wording.
Yeah, I'll give you the wording on the bid.
We have the right to cancel.
Yeah.
Reject
The
it.
selection criteria, this is the selection criteria part of this, which I think probably Carl and Billy might have just found as well. The selection of a contractor will not be based solely on price, low bid. The town is committed to the lowest, best qualified, and most responsible vendor. Selection of contractor will be based upon the following standards. 1, bid responsiveness, whether the bid seems realistic, thoughtful, and fully addresses the scope of work. 2, reputation and professional qualifications of contractor and individuals assigned to complete this work detail. 3, demonstrated experience with cemetery mowing and maintenance or equivalent work. Professional references will be contacted. 4, cost of work to be done. And 5, proposal that best meets the overall needs of the town of Shaftsbury.
You know, I would suggest, I completely agree with Carl that it could extend the contract. I would suggest, and, you know, I don't know that that our bid specs would preclude us from doing this, but, you know, when we have somebody taking a job on like this, and equipment is clearly important. We want them to have the proper equipment, and we're looking, in this particular case, at somebody that certainly has a proven record. And I would suggest, if there's a way that we can, you know, because when I think about a one-year bid, and then you review it, and the reason for reviewing it is to see if that person performed the way you hoped that they would perform. And my feeling is that we know that this person, this firm, performs the way we want them to perform. And in order for that particular, in that particular field, for their own budgeting purposes. I mean, you may have a situation where somebody is thinking about purchasing a piece of equipment, but not on the fence because, gee, I've only got for sure a one-year contract here. Mm-hmm. If I had a 3-year or 4-year contract, I could go ahead and purchase that piece of equipment and know I'm good. Mm-hmm. You know what you understand what I'm saying?
I understand that completely.
So, you know, I'm wondering if there's a way that we can do that at this point in time, if we determine, you know, once we determine who the person is. And in this particular case, if it were Sycamore Landscaping, I would suggest that we propose a contract that is at least the 3-year contract.
One last thing, though. Let's remember, even if we do that tonight, and I think we should, this offeror has not offered a price for that and could turn it down.
Well,
I doubt that he would.
He's offered $14,000 for each year.
But I'm suggesting adding an additional year.
If it's a 4-year.
That's, we can't award a contract to him tonight if we do that.
That's true. We could do a 3-year.
Ken?
I tend to want to go to the low bidder, but having said that, I think you've got to recognize that Sycamore is a taxpayer in town, that they do, like Karen said, they got a good reputation. I think just because I'm a contractor, I would tend to stick with a 2-year contract, because if you tie yourself down to a 4-year contract, with the economy being the way it is and fuel prices being the way they are and insurance and everything else, you could get yourself into a contract that maybe 2 years, 3 years down the road, you can't afford it anymore.
But the point here, Kenny, is not a 3-year contract. It's a 1-year contract with 3 optional years. each year.
I understand, but I mean,
So we don't-
if
so
I
we're
was,
not-
bidding
We're
on
not, but
something.
we're not locked into anything.
Oh,
After the first year, we
okay.
say,
I just
walk
wouldn't
away.
wanna, if I was, what I'm saying is, if I was bidding on it as a contractor, I wouldn't want to get myself locked into something 3 or 4 years.
But
Well,
he
that's up
did,
to them.
but they've already done it. In other words, the benefit to the town in saying, if we award this as a 3-year contract, is that we know that each of those 3 years, it's $14,000.
Yeah, I understand
So we
that.
have a level of predictability
Mm-hmm.
in terms of cost and frankly, in terms of the quality of the job.
Right.
And I think the contractor has predictability for his own.
Oh, yeah, I understand that, but like, all I'm saying is what he bid on here that's fine, you know?
I have some concerns about, given the way that we presented the bid, I have a concern, while I like the idea, I have a bit of a concern extending it for the extra year, because that is beyond the scope of what we proposed.
In terms of a 4th year?
The 4th year,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I have no issue with looking at the bid and looking at the local vendor, I think more favorably for all the reasons discussed. We don't need to rehash those, but I think offering it in the way that it was proposed, that I think that we do it, that we would potentially accept the bid for the year with the 2 years extension, and that we already have, from our standpoint, we have the agreement to for the pricing at the level, basically continuing over 3 years, but at the same point, at the end of each of those years, let's say assuming that the service was adequate, next year, we talk to the contractor. If they're willing to continue for another year at that, then we can offer that to them. If some of the economic conditions that Ken talks about have come into play, at that point, they can decline to accept it at that point.
Yeah, if I may, I'd suggest that, based on general contract principles, if you have a contract, I mean, you can always issue a change order, and a change order could be an additional year if it's not a cardinal change to the contract, because if it's a cardinal change, that's kind of like saying, build a garage, and here's, by the way, now we want you to build a hospital attached to it.
Right.
Here, if we're talking about possibly changing the contract later after 3 years and say, we'd like to add another year, I don't think that would be considered a cardinal change, because it'd only be like 25% of what he was doing. So I think what you're proposing would be very viable.
Okay.
Frankly, I'm still a little confused. Are we talking about having to go through this whole process again a year from now?
No, you'd only have to rebid you don't.
But even, in other words, it's going to have to come to the board table again a year from now and say,
Yes.
okay, do we want
Just to sign.
That's right.
Just sign the renewal.
Yeah, it would just be to assign a renewal.
And again, the reason for doing that, you're saying just to sign a renewal, I'm assuming there's a
It's an
process
option.
involved.
You just exercise the option.
It's exercising an option on the.
That's it. It would just be in the
Okay.
contract.
There would not
Sign a
go out
piece
to
of paper.
bid or anything else. It would just be.
That's fine. That's fine. I guess I'm just feeling like it's a process that seems to be a lot of busy work and doesn't give the contractor the peace of mind tomorrow to know he has a 3-year contract with the town.
But Karen, then we should have changed that a long time ago, because that would be a major change of contract, to go from 1 year with 2-year options to a full 3-year contract.
Yeah, that's a
cardinal
very,
change.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a very
Okay.
different change.
Yeah,
Okay.
other people
that
might
was
have
my
bidded
point.
differently then, you know?
Okay,
Right.
They knew they had 3 years of work.
okay,
Yeah, that's the reason.
okay.
Any other questions or discussion from the board?
The only thing I would add, just to clarify why I think there is a point of saying how much preference you give to the local bidder, is that if I went and bid on a job, and I mean, I can tell you this from my bidding experience, if I bid on a job and was low bidder by 15% and didn't get it, but didn't have a reason for that, I would just say, I'm never gonna have a shot at this company again, and I wouldn't bid it in the future. So that's the concern that I have, is that when we start setting, I have no problem with giving preference to a local bidder if we state that ahead of time so that people bidding it know. But when we don't state those parameters, I think we're setting ourselves up to 3-5 years down the pike, have nobody bidding when we put work out.
If I may respond to that, I had exactly that argument and that concern last time this contract came up, because it was based on low bid only. This is not based on low bid. And don't take any word that I said this evening is that we should give it to this guy because he's from Shaftsbury.
Right.
I didn't say that at all.
Exactly.
On the contrary. I said we have a man or an entity that has an excellent reputation, has done quality work. We're dealing with an issue that is very, very sensitive to people where quality is actually more important to them than dollars. I'm not talking about because he's from Shaftsbury, because everybody knows him. That's irrelevant to me. The fact that, I'll say personally, I heard that he had hired local people, but he couldn't do it because he didn't get the contract. Well, that's too bad, and that hurts the town too, but that's ancillary. The issue is we're talking about quality here. Two of the three things in the list identified quality. My only reason for suggesting and for voting for the higher price is because we know the quality of the man's work. I don't care where he comes from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do we have information from Green Mountain Boys references that leads us to believe that they do or don't provide quality work?
They do. They do good work. I didn't have anybody say they don't do good work.
I would also note that the last time we had references, it also said that the contractor did very good work.
That's right.
We know that this person does good work in our cemeteries. He knows them, and for me, that's worth a lot more than $2,000.
The thing to know, and Bill, your point's well taken. I actually agree with you wholeheartedly from the standpoint that you're coming from. Given the way that this bid proposal was submitted and the fact that it is the wording that I've just read off to you indicates that the low price is not the only item. It's a culmination of the 5 items that were listed. I feel very comfortable that we can make a decision, not in this case to award to the low number only because of the number of items that we have in the entire bid. I'm comfortable with it, even given the discussion that you had.
I understand what you're saying, but it sounds to me, if I was to step away from this conversation and listen in, that the only thing being considered right now is the town's past experience with one bidder. And that's not how it was bidding.
And the dollar difference. The dollar difference is relatively small. If we're $20,000 versus 12, I'd be singing a different tune here. But it's $2,000 difference. I'm not too good with my math, but that's not that much in terms of percent.
I think the only other thing that I would mention would be that Green Mountain Boys is from 50 miles away. Mm-hmm. And who's to say that 6 months from now, gas isn't going to be $6 a gallon? Yeah, he's going to be a lot less happy coming down here.
Well,
contractually, you're right. Contractually, though, if they're bound to a contract, we can compel them to do that if we needed to go that route. But going back to the same thing, I mean, part of the reason that we're having this discussion again this year is we looked at a bidder last year that provided better pricing.
Yeah.
And again, we're not as far away, and still, but the quality, it comes back to Carl's point that the quality that they provided was not the same quality that we got. So it was, even though we had some cost savings, we did hear a lot of complaints from a lot of folks in the community about the quality of the upkeep of cemeteries last year.
And that might have been good enough quality.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't saying that it wasn't like the grass was 8 feet tall in the light, but it was not to the standard that the town had become accustomed to.
Right.
Like I said, I know that I heard it from at least 5 or 6 folks, and I'm not part of the cemetery committee. Yeah. So, and it was varying people. So.
Right.
Well, and I might also add, just we can call Sycamore Landscaping 2 days before Memorial Day, if it's not short enough, and I know for a fact that this is a firm that, gives a lot back to this community. When we had our 250, over here at Cleveland Park, I mean, they mowed a field for nothing. They mowed Cleveland Park for nothing. They do give back a lot. And, whether that's the additional $2,000 or not, it means something to the
no point in, like I said, but it is good discussion for the right reasons. All right, is there any other new comments or suggestions?
Michael had his
I was just
hand up.
I would just down the road from Maple Hill Cemetery. We just moved there, but, and I guess maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know Sycamore Landscaping. I bet I know who it is if I knew their name, but the cemeteries last year were not great.
That's right.
Being
Right.
polite. So
Yep.
quality, you know, and everyone here knows I'm tight. But there's a lot to be said for quality. I mean, and as Carl mentioned, you know, I mean, we have friends, relatives, you know, that deserve the quality that are in there. And I would just encourage the board to move forward and take quality over price.
Thank you, Michael. All right.
I move to accept the bid of Sycamore as proposed.
Do we have
I'll
a second?
second that. There was one question from the audience.
Okay.
I know
Was there?
for discussion.
I just had one comment
yeah.
just about the process, and I guess maybe I am looking at it from the outside. And to me, it seems like the qualifications that Craig read out, that were printed in the newspaper, none of them apply except the last one on the bottom. You didn't say price, so what are vendors in the future supposed to expect? When Margie said that the other guys, Craig, you know, his qualifications are fine, his quality in the past seemed fine. All right, he's 50 miles away, but it doesn't seem logical to put a thing in the newspaper to say, why don't we just say, well, it really depends on how Shaftsbury, what's going to benefit Shaftsbury residents best, period.
Well,
Everything else to me is just, you're not taking a lot of it into account, obviously. It's not price, you can throw that one out. You can throw out the quality of the work, that's not part of anything. So I agree that, well, I am looking at it from the outside and I'm confused. I don't know who Sycamore is. I'd rather have somebody from Shaftsbury here. But you might as well be honest with the vendors and just say, it really depends on how we feel that night, and because obviously there's 2 out of, I don't remember all 5 of them, but the only thing that really seems like it applies is number 5.
Well, I don't think it's fair for you to say it all depends on how we feel tonight. I don't think that's fair at all, Michael.
Well,
we have
it's not fair to the vendor either.
Well, but is it?
The contractor.
But it does state, and I would bet that almost any bid that you look at in the paper from any town is going to say at the end of it, the town reserves the right to reject all bids and take whatever is in the best interest of the town. And yeah, I guess it is our job sitting up here to decide what is in the best interest of the town. And in this particular case, I have no qualms about saying this is in the best interest of the town because it's not just price, it is quality. I don't know the other vendor. If we had 5 vendors here that all qualified and we had not had any experience with any of them, and so it wasn't a matter of coming to ourselves and asking how did this person perform, and we had to go out to other towns, then even that is a bit of a guessing game if they all come in, you know, looking fairly equal. So what is it that puts somebody over the line? Well, for me, it's history, it's quality of work, and it's a proven record. And again, whether he was from Shaftsbury or Bennington, I would be stating it very clearly, that I would much prefer to go with a quantity that was here. We didn't know this Sycamore Landscaping was going to bid this year. We had no idea. It almost surprised me, frankly, that he did, because we nixed him last year because of the cost.
After a number of years of service. So.
After 3 or 4 years, pardon?
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, after 3 or 4 years of really good service. And you know, we, I think as a town, suffered as a result, and I'm certainly not willing to, you know, to go there again.
Right, so I'm done, but I was here last year, and it did seem like you were troubled by it.
Yeah.
Carl was troubled by it. I was in favor of. But if that qualification you have at the end saying we reserve the right, why didn't that have effect last year then?
But let me also say something. First of all, Mike.
1 year ago.
A couple things. Your comment about what is going on. This is not an objective evaluation in terms of the ability to be objective. You want a totally objective evaluation, you say, price, low bid will get the award. Easy. 2 cents cheaper, you got the award. Okay? This is a subjective evaluation. Why? Because it's dealing with things that are not easily quantifiable.
Then why was my own point, was why are we even listing it? Why don't we just...
Because even if you have a subjective evaluation, you have to be able to provide evidence of a rational basis for your decision. And our rational basis is identified in the 5 elements here, okay? You're looking at the last one and saying, well, whatever's in the best interest of the town. I don't see that as controlling the others. I see quality, bid responsiveness, reputation, professional qualifications. That's what I'm looking at. Now, I can't put a number on it tonight. If I sat down with a matrix, maybe I could. And I know probably where it'd come out, basically. But I'm talking about those, and I've only heard that here tonight. I haven't heard somebody say, it's in the best interest of the town to give this to this particular contractor. What I've heard is the dollars are not really that far apart. And the quality is established and known. And the importance of this particular service is very, very much scrutinized and important to the town, as evidenced by feedback to general knowledge, So based on those factors, granted, those are pretty damn subjective factors, but that's the only way we can award it. It's not going to get objective because of this. Bidders that read this would see, it says specifically, the selection of a contractor will not be based solely on price, low bid. The town is committed to the, quote, lowest, best qualified, and most responsible vendor. Okay? And that's what we've done.
Yeah. And I would say, based on the board's discussion, we've based the decision on that exactly as we described to the vendors.
Now, people can disagree and say, I don't believe it, but, that's up to them. I'm telling you publicly, my reason is going for quality, and the price is not substantially different. If it weren't there, I'd agree with Billy and say, wait a second, and maybe even your argument, this creates too much of a skewed view of the way this town is going to award things. I don't believe it does, though, based on this, because we've got standards here, 5 standards, and we're awarding it based on those standards.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any? Karen. Is there any further discussion on the board regarding this topic? If there's not, all those in favor of awarding the cemetery mowing contract to Sycamore Landscaping signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? Let the record show that would be a 4-1-0 vote. You'll contact the vendor and let them know, Margie? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for the input on that. All right, next item on the agenda is one that we tabled last week, because we thought it was important that we have all 5 of our members here. Billy was not able to join us last week, and I know he was one that when we had adjusted the time last year from 7 to 6, he had been part of that discussion and part of the reason that we had amended it. So tonight we're going to bring that matter up again. I think you all have that document. Typically we meet the 1st and 3rd Mondays of the month. So the time is in question, whether we continue at 6, whether we revert to 7. Some discussion we had last week, Bill, Carl had indicated a preference of maybe looking back at 7 o'clock with the idea, well, I guess maybe I won't put words in his mouth. You can briefly explain what it was you presented last week.
I believe that, and even from the basic feedback from the crowd last week, that 7 o'clock is an easier time for people to get here. They can get home from their business, they can sit down with their families, they can have dinner, and they can get in a car and come over if they want to. At 6 o'clock, I assume people would be somewhat rushed in order to get home or drop off things or not even go home. And I think the whole idea of this is to make it more public. Granted, we are on television this evening, but not every one of our meetings are, and some of the more important ones aren't on television. So I think it's vital that we get as much public participation, and at a time when that participation is easy for them to attain. So that would be my reason, and also I'd like to be home and have dinner too before coming over.
Dinner is important to me too. I don't usually get it, but that's my own choosing, so. Bill?
I'm open to either. My preference is 6 just because of how late we tend to run, particularly when we were meeting at 7 and how early I get up in the morning. So the combination of them makes me prefer 6. But having said that, you know, I'm open to 7 if that's what works best for everybody. 2 comments I'll throw in, or 3 comments I'll throw in there. Carl, great point about not being on television all the time. I think that speaks to the efforts that we need to make to have fewer special meetings. In regards to the townspeople struggling to get here at 6, if that's a concern, I would suggest maybe we look at moving minutes and warrants up to the beginning of the agenda, so that as people are rushing to get here and getting here later, they're missing the pieces that they usually leave before we get to them anyhow.
That's a good
idea.
And then,
old business.
yeah, there's other boards that do that.
Right, that's a good point.
The other piece I would say is if we are going to move to 7, which, like I said, I'll go whichever way the board wants to go with that. I would ask that we set an end out time. You know, that we say no later than 10:30, maybe. That's it. So if we can't get our agenda in by 10:30.
9:30.
I'm basing that off of.
Yeah, I agree. I
We
would say
were here till
9:30.
midnight how many nights?
I would say 9:30.
Well, last week, actually, my point was, I had said 7, and I had kind of openly noted, tongue-in-cheek, not so much tongue-in-cheek, that would force us to cut back because we couldn't be here that late. And that I know that the chair is already thinking of some ways to cut back on the time, so it would go hand in hand,
Yeah,
certainly.
so I'm fine with that. Those are my thoughts, and I am willing to be amicable with whichever direction the board wants to go.
Ken, any?
I would agree with Bill. Change the agenda and keep it 6 or 7, whatever. I'm good with 6. But.
Karen?
I personally prefer 6 because I like to get out earlier. But I do really like the idea of the minutes and the warrants in the forefront of the meeting. And, you know, I'm sympathetic to the concern that was expressed by some audience, you know, residents out here, that maybe some would prefer 7. I don't know if, you know, making that change would make a difference, but I prefer 6, but again, I'm willing to do whatever the majority is.
Well, then I'll make.
What about Margie? Could we ask Margie if
I
she
have
has
no
a preference?
preference. I almost prefer 7.
Gives you a little bit of time between.
Yeah, it just, because the day slows down by around 4 in the afternoon, and then I can really get ready for a meeting.
Okay. Comments from Barry?
How about 6:30?
You were reading my mind, but.
I was thinking that too. With
Great idea.
I was one who said 7, and the reason to get hot, to have dinner and get cleaned up and stuff and get down during time. But if we move the warrants and the minutes to the earlier part of the meeting, then that gives like another 15 or 20 minutes to do that. That would be fine with me too. But I do try to make every meeting, and it's a challenge to get here.
At 6. Okay.
So if we did 6:30, like Barry's suggesting, and move the
thing
warrants
up.
and the minutes off,
Yeah, that would
then
be a
we might
good-
be into the meat of the meeting by 7.
By 7.
Right.
Or maybe identify a time that we will address a particular substantive issue, so people know to be here at that time.
I was going to, okay, before I comment.
I was just going to say, I think that would be ideal, whether you do 6 or 6:30. I mean, there's always going to be those 1 or 2 agenda items that you know are likely to bring some public input. And, you know, even if you just put like an estimated start time.
Right.
You know, because forgive me, but I generally in approval of the minutes from the previous meeting or warrants. So if I say 6:30, you said, okay, eat potatoes at 6:45. So long as people coming in and out didn't disturb the meeting, I just think it'd be a great thing if you're going to do like that, kind of mark it on the agenda.
Yep.
Well put. Any other comment? I was just going to add that one of my thoughts, as I've been thinking through this the last few weeks, and actually Margaret and I have talked about this, we really need to, for our own sakes, but even more so for the sakes of our people. I have had a few half sarcastic comments from over the last couple of years that, and we have run some really long meetings. Oh. And if people are watching, even the ones at home, whether they're watching it live or watching it even on tape delay, it's like most of them say, man, I don't have time to watch 3 or 4 hours of meeting time, as much as I'd like to. So what I'm going to ask, and what I'm going to try to, and lead by example, because I've never been accused of being short-winded in my lifetime ever, if we can come to the board with the idea, there's never, let me say this first, there's never a reason not to discuss a topic to its conclusion. If there is some important topic, we should take the time that it's necessary to accomplish it. That may or may not be all in one evening. If we need to, we can come back and revisit things. But having said that, I would like to offer a suggestion that we kind of adhere to rough time frames, that on any given topic that we try not to maybe exceed a 10 or 15 minute time frame on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. That we come prepared in that, so even if we have something that may be in depth, that we come prepared in a way that we can present it and work through it and be done with it in that time frame on a regular basis. Again, I'm not naive enough to think that we're never going to run over or have things that need further discussion. But if we endeavor to do that, I'll endeavor to try to keep the agendas down to a bearable size. Tonight we've got a pretty long one, but nonetheless, and then maybe incorporate some of these ideas that we've set. Maybe looking at a 6:30 time frame to start, do some of the changes in the order of business, and then if we work as a board to work through in a timely and productive manner, I think that we can accomplish a lot of these things. I also don't have a real big problem personally with putting an end time, saying that we won't run a meeting longer without the board's approval of running a meeting longer than, let's say, 2.5 hours. I have no issue with that, and that anything that's not accomplished, that we roll to the next agenda. In the short term, that could be problematic. There might be people irritated with us. We might be irritated because we haven't got through it, but I think it will help us develop the discipline to make sure we do that on a regular basis. So I would, that's my 2 cents. And I won't talk anymore because I'm doing exactly what I said that I won't do.
So do you want a motion, do we need to make a motion to amend our meeting time?
Yes.
Okay, I would make a motion that we amend the meeting time, that the select board will meet on the first and the third Mondays of each month at 6:30.
I think the agenda order items may not need to be as part of the...
Right, but do we, I'm asking you, I don't know if we want to have that end time as part of the motion, that our meetings will adjourn by 9:30 unless there is a affirmative vote by the full board to extend it.
Does that seem...
I don't have a problem with that. And I think I really would like to incorporate, though, somehow, may not have to be in a motion, Billy's suggestion about moving the warrants and adjournment up, and identify a time that we will address the first substantive, or a time when public comments will be taken, and then we start our meeting. So if we start at 6:30, which I have no problem with, if we say that public comments will be taken at 10 to 7, and people know they have a comment, get here by 10 to 7, and the meeting's going to get off. I would also suggest, if, again, perhaps not in a motion, I think it'd be interesting to try and identify times that we will dedicate, even on our agenda, how much time will be dedicated to particular subjects. So that if we're going to identify garage, it will say 1 hour. Or if we're going to discuss something less controversial, 20 minutes. And so we're kind of trying to do that. So you as a chair can be looking at your watch and saying, we're 10 minutes over, let's wrap this thing up. as opposed to try your best.
But don't you think that that's the job of the chair?
Yes.
I mean, if we charge him basically with setting up our meetings in such a way that they're manageable, and I would think even though, we've indicated what we'd like to have happen, and I think that's Margie and Craig working on minutes and warrants and where they are placed on the agenda. I frankly don't want to feel like I want to be in the position of sort of micromanaging how the chair and Margie set up the agenda time-wise. If Craig is looking at it and says cemetery mowing, Margie, this should not take us longer than 15 minutes. It's his job, I think, to figure that out, and maybe not ours. I don't want to, frankly, be looking at every one of our agendas and saying, okay, well, when they send a draft agenda around, okay, now do we have to all sit and figure out and agree on how many minutes for each one? I'd prefer that that's the chair's job.
Which is why I said I wasn't suggesting it be made in form of a motion. I'm making it suggested, since the chair and Margie make up the agenda, the chair and Margie can decide how much time they want to jot down for a particular subject.
Yes.
Right.
Or if we're going to make a recommendation for an agenda item, we might identify how much time we think we should put down, and at least it creates a format to get us the heck out of here.
That's exactly.
Before, the next full moon.
Okay.
So should I clarify my motion again?
Yes, why don't you restate the motion?
Since I didn't have a second.
I'll second it.
I would, well.
Okay, let's wait.
I would move.
Read what I actually wrote down, and you can decide if you like it or not.
Yes.
Carol Alger moved to amend the meeting time of the Select Board on the first and third Mondays of each month, beginning at 6:30 PM, to begin at 6:30 PM. The meeting to adjourn by 9:30 PM unless the board votes to extend the meeting.
Yes.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion regarding the motion? If there is not, all those in favor of amending or setting the approval of annual notice of meetings as noted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we will make take the suggestions and incorporate them into future meeting notices. Margie, will you confirm for us? I believe our meeting in 2 weeks, though, it will be meeting at 6 PM because we've already warned it due to the hearing for the
Open space subdivision language.
So starting with the meeting on the 15th of April, we'll begin meeting regularly at 6:30.
Correct.
All right, next item on the agenda, hopefully one that doesn't take us 15 minutes. Liquor license application for timetables. I believe this would be the third time is the charm, I believe.
There was an omission on the second page, merely asking whether or not the party was making application for the benefit of some other party, and the answer to that is no. So remember, we need to sign.
Right.
Make a motion to approve if somebody does.
I'll make a motion that we approve the liquor license for Times Table for 1 year. Timetables.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion regarding this matter? Being none, all those in favor of approving the liquor license renewal for Timetables signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Now, I only have one little arrow, but you have to sign it twice.
Okay.
There are 2 second pages. And just to let you know that, Mr. Chair, the foreman has requested that we table the next item to the next meeting.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is scheduled to be annual highway financial plan and grant applications. As Margie's indicated, that we still have outstanding information and some background work to do on that.
We're trying to gather, for the public's benefit, the estimate for the paving application that we're going to be submitting to the V-Trans.
Okay. All right, the next item, well, I'll wait till we get the signatures done, and then we'll move to the next item. What? And we have him, the interested party.
Mm-hmm.
We should have him draw up and
Sure.
You want to?
That's his name.
Yeah.
I have to run downstairs.
Okay, no problem.
Oh, wait a minute, get the right line here.
Any line.
As long as it's on the left side of the page.
Yep.
All right. Next item then that we have tonight is town officer appointments. We have three different, actually we have a couple different categories. Beginning first with the Developmental Review Board. We actually have, according to my, the note that I'm looking at here indicates that we have one 3-year term for a full member up for review or appointment. That would be the position held by David Mance. That's a 3-year term that expires as of 2013. Margie has indicated to me that Mr. Mance has submitted a letter indicating his desire to continue on and ask for a reappointment. We have we have the chair of the DRB is with us tonight, Megan Donkers. Do you have any comment, support, against for that, or do you have that same information that he has indicated a desire to continue?
I wasn't sure until now that it was official, but I do have to say that there's 2 people on the board that are completely knowledgeable, both with experience and just in general, that we can't replace. We actually need him still. I'm trying to get Chris and Dave to train us because I know they're not going to want to do it forever, but it's been my experience that he's been extremely helpful to me personally and is willing to share that information. So I'm kind of hoping you'll give me 3 more years in there.
Were you aware of any other folks that were interested in the position that applied?
Just one quick question, Megan, you mentioned training. Have you had an opportunity to, I know you had talked about bringing VLCT down, and I don't know if there was a conflict, if that actually happened?
They're coming Wednesday.
They are? Oh,
yes.
great. Oh, great.
They're coming Wednesday, and what I've worked out with this is that if we have a light agenda, there will be in-house training at that meeting.
Yeah.
So that we can go over things like a site plan without it actually being a real case, so that we get familiar with things, kind of work together in an unofficial capacity.
Okay, any comments from the board?
Well, I would make a motion if we wanted for discussion to reappoint Dave Mance to the 3, well, let's see. Would it be a 3-year term?
Expiring, yes. It would be for a 3-year term expiring in 2016.
Okay, because I know we had moved things around when we made our appointments last month. We changed things up a bit, and I just want to be sure in terms of the cycle.
That would be correct, because...
Or that's a 3-year term that's up right now.
Right.
That expires what years?
2016. So that would leave us with, there's one member, one term expiring next year, 2014. There'll be 2 in 2015 and 2 in 2016. So there's never more than one, or more than 2 leaving at one time.
Okay. Yes, I would make that motion.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion regarding the appointment, or?
Yeah, one thing that I would say, Craig, is in the last year we've had to fill a lot of DRB positions for a variety of reasons. And every single time that we've filled, we've had interviews. Now, I understand there's been competing candidates, but we still have letters of interest from the position that we filled 2 weeks ago. I'm assuming Margie's statement that there's no letters of interest is in regards to nothing new at this point. I guess my, my comment at this point would be, having sat in the audience and seen some things that have taken place at meetings, I fear that we would not be doing our due diligence to not at least ask to hear Mr. Mance's side of some things that have taken place. We've talked about, just the openness in meetings and whatnot, and creating public trust. And there definitely was a night that was a challenge for that board and Mr. Mance in particular. And I think it's a conversation that's probably worth having with the applicant before reappointing.
Greg, can I comment on that comment?
Sure.
In the interviews with the last two applicants, I really feel like this board has changed. I mean, some of you were there for the town garage hearing. It has changed, and I can say that everything has been above board, and we're all working together as a team. And I think that if you draw this process out, it would be to the detriment of the board, in my opinion.
Thank you.
I would tend to agree with that comment. I think we've all received certainly written comments from past and present DRB board members. And I agree that we have a very different board at this point. And I think, frankly, we have a fairly diverse board and a strong board. I think we have people on that board who have the ability to listen to each other, but, hopefully not be completely swayed one way or another. I think they're smart thinking folks and independent thinkers. So, and I also, I think there has been a lot of upheaval, and I'm not saying for bad reasons, because there were reasons that happened. But the value of experience, when we have several fairly new board members, I think is important. And I'm comfortable proceeding this way, but whatever the board determines they want to do.
Okay.
I'm good.
Bill raises a good point.
You guys all heard the reporting that I brought in. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't reappoint based upon that, but I just think there's some questions and discussion that could come along with that.
Well, I do think there's been a lot of, there were a lot of questions and discussions. And I personally feel like I know where various members stood on things. I don't know that, interviewing is going to change any of that. But I'm hopeful, again, with a very changed board right now, and that this particular member is wanting to continue in a very different environment from last year. I think it will continue to be a very different board from what it was.
I worry about the message we send to the town, though. If we have one particular member who, the DRB doesn't answer to us. When we hear something from people in the town, for the most part, we have to we always say we'll take it under advisement until appointments. So if appointments come and go and we don't ask the question, I'm just not sure if we've done our service in that case, and I'll leave it at that in the interest of time.
I'm going to take the, I need to take the position and follow Bill on this one. His point's a good one. Not, again, that I don't think that the appointment may very well be just for the reasons that Megan mentioned, But I do think that in fairness to all the candidates that we've interviewed, I think that I have to support the idea that we should at least have David come and sit down and talk with us. So I think for the reasons that Bill states, that I think we owe it to the community to just to have those questions answered, if for nothing else. And I don't mean to do this as any sort of an embarrassment to David. He's had a lot of years of experience, but I don't think that we're doing the town justice by not doing that. So that's my opinion. Having said that, we have a motion on the table to reappoint David Mance to the board in a second. Based on the discussion, unless we have the motion is rescinded, then we need to move forward on that motion. So based on that, any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of reappointing David Mance to the DRB for a 3-year term expiring in 2016 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay for the reasons noted. Any abstentions? David Mance is therefore we appoint him to the DRB by a vote of 3-2 to the DRB for a 3-year term expiring in 2016. All right. It also notes on here that we have a vacant alternate position, but I believe that we actually filled that position, appointed that position several weeks ago.
We did.
That's a 1-year term expiring next year in 2014.
Oh, yeah, you're looking at the
I got maybe an older list. Michael Biddy was appointed to that position for a 1-year term expiring next year on town meeting day, I believe, or...
Yeah, we did it.
All right, so now we move to the planning board. There are 2 members of the planning board whose terms have expired or are expiring in 2013. They are Bill Pennebaker and Abigail Beck. Margie, I believe you told me that both of them have expressed an interest in being reappointed.
Correct.
Were there any other candidates that came forward and were interested in filling those positions?
No.
Any other applicants? All right, then is there any discussion or anybody else have any other information before we proceed forward?
Do you want them as separate motions or as a combined motion?
Let's do them individually.
Okay. Move that we reappoint Bill Pennebaker to the Planning Commission.
Now, I do want to double check the terms here. 14 to 14. Yeah, so that would be correct. These would be 3-year terms expiring in 2016. So we have one.
No, Abigail's is like a 2-year. Right. So Bill's would be a 3-year.
Why is her term a 2-year term? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's, you were playing with terms to try to get it so you had people rotating off.
Okay.
13's 114. I mean, you could do what you...
I think that okay, then let's work with Bill first. So we have a motion to reappoint Bill Pennebaker for a 3-year term expiring in 2016, and we have a second, correct? Did we have a second?
Nobody seconded.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion regarding this matter? There being none, all those in favor of reappointing Bill Pennebaker signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That motion carries unanimously. The second item is, or the second candidate for reappointment is Abigail Beck. Margie brings a good point that we had done some staggering of the terms to get them to, so that they weren't all 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 weren't expiring the same year. We may want to consider moving this to a 3-year term as well now, so that we'll have one expiring and then 2, or one expiring 1 year and then 2 the other 2 years, subsequent years.
Makes sense. Then I move that we appoint Abigail Beck to a 3-year term on the Planning Commission.
Second.
Is there any further discussion regarding that matter?
Did anybody ask her if she wants to go for 3?
I did not ask. I guess we'll find out.
I guess we'll find out. She can always say no.
She can decline.
Yeah.
Good point. Is there any other discussion regarding that matter? Other than appointing Abigail to 3 years? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of appointing Abigail Beck to a 3-year term signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. All right, the next item is a trustee of public funds. Right now, we have only 2 members of that group. But we did have this week, as you saw in the meeting notes, we have a third candidate that has volunteered to come forward and round out that group. He's actually in attendance tonight, Barry Meyer. Do you have any comment? Would you like to say anything, address the board, why you'd like to do it, other than what you've told us, or any background or anything that you need to add?
I think I said the essence of what it could bring to the meeting. And you can say it for the rest of the people, you could read it. And I think I worked well with Bill before. Something I could do that.
Any of the board members have any questions for Barry?
Just like to say thank you for coming forward, Barry. It's not always easy to get people to come forward for this kind of stuff, so thank you.
I'm sorry, could you spell his name or give me his name?
It's Barry Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to point out that Barry you've served in this position in the past and done a terrific job, so I also thank you for coming forward.
That trip to Florida was fun too.
Trip to Florida. Not in the interest we make these days.
It would be an awful long trip. Pennies don't get you very far these days.
Yeah.
All right, if there's no further questions or comment, then I would entertain a motion to appoint Barry Meyer to as a trustee of public funds.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
How many years is this motion for?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think a 3-year term.
I believe it's 3 years.
I thought they were too.
Yeah, so it would be through 2016.
Okay.
Is that and is this an alternate? That's right, because Ken's came
It
out.
was on the ballot.
3
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Is that okay with you, Barry?
it's how long?
Do we hear 7?
3-year term expiring in 2016, Sam.
Yes, I should note that this is an appointment following, there were no candidates that were
On the ballot.
and no one received the requisite number of write-in votes to actually be elected. That's why we're making the appointment.
I would say one thing though, that I think if Bill and I were still on the committee, I wouldn't have volunteered. He really pretty knowledgeable about the issue, and he's got a couple more years on his belt. He must be even better than he was then. When we started out, we inherited a pretty chaotic record. Many of them were up there. We spent days here and evenings going through and purging.
Okay.
So I think he's got it pretty well straightened out. Be capable.
All right, with that comment, all those in favor of appointing Barry Meyer to this position signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? That will carry unanimously. At the suggestion of the town administrator, she's indicated that she has not had great success in getting through all of the other annual appointments for a number of the other officers, so she suggested that we table that part of this until either our next, one of our
Yeah,
next
just a
meetings.
couple of people that I'm waiting.
Fine.
All right. All right, the next item is one that we've actually talked about a little bit, is about the oaths of office. It's an approval of a policy for appointed officials. We just started discussion last week, and I think we left it at, we wanted to discuss it with the full board here before we decided to move forward with the, is that your recollection, Carl? You look puzzled.
I remember that discussion with regard to the liaison positions, but not about oaths of office.
Not the oath of office.
Or did we not, am I losing my?
This is next. This is number 12. Oath of office.
I don't remember what the issue was with regard to the oath of office, right?
Why did
There was no issue
No, I
to
thought,
delay it.
right.
Why did we?
It wasn't on the last agenda, I don't think.
Maybe that's the problem.
This is just strictly as you approved it in the minutes.
I thought we talked
pretty
about
much.
this last week. I apologize. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Hey, it's okay.
All right, so, okay, here we go.
Want me to read the policy?
That we had drafted, just to bring people up to date.
Yeah.
We had actually, there had been some discussion of having all of the appointed officials take an oath of office. Not so much that it's binding, but more that it reinforces the idea that they're stepping forward and doing something, and just reinforces the fact that we as the community are looking for them to really do those things and take them, not that they don't take them seriously, but really just reinforce the seriousness with which we look to the appointed officials to take their duties seriously and in the best interest of the town. So.
And that this really applies because state statute requires it of many of our other, like us and the town clerk and the treasurer, but VLCT recommends that members of the Development Review Board and the Planning Commission also take the oath of office. And at this point, up until we agreed to this policy, that was not a requirement.
Right.
So it's really those two boards.
Right.
There's something I'm a little confused on here. It says that VLCT says that the town has a policy that all appointed officials take the oath, and the DRB and Planning Commission members would have to take the oath as well.
Right.
Are we requiring that all appointed officials take the oath? So are we going to make, say, our animal control officer take an oath? And
yeah, that was going to be my policy. My question about the policy.
Yeah, I mean, because we have a lot of appointed officials.
I know, but I thought we had this conversation that we felt that the Development Review Board and the Planning Commission were involved in activities that were important enough.
I see them very differently.
Yeah.
I see them very differently as far as the relevance of an oath is concerned. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just looking at the wording that says all appointed officials, and I'm just asking, I guess, for some clarity.
League had said in their email back that, at least as forwarded back to us by Lon, was that the Secretary of State's office, and it was from the town clerk, I take it back, with regards to requirements for administering oaths of office, if a town has a policy, that all appointed officials take the oath of office, then
but this is not, but we don't have a policy that all appointed officials take the oath of office. What we decided was that the policy would just be for the Development Review Board and Planning.
That's how I recall it.
Well, that's what you did, but it's still inconsistent with what the league has said.
How is it inconsistent? It's saying the VLCT advised if the town has a policy that all appointed officials.
And we don't have a policy.
We do not. And if we did, then the DRB and Planning Commission members would take the oath of office.
So it really should be a policy that applies to all appointed officials.
I guess I'm not reading it that way.
I guess the question I would have that I would think we would want VLCT to advise us on is, can we mandate that certain appointed, can we adopt a policy that certain appointed officials have to take an oath without adopting a policy that all appointed officials have to take an oath?
Right.
I'd ask the question, why is it so important to slice the bologna so thin? I mean, an oath is, the way I see it, something that...
It's a promise.
Yeah, it sets the person apart, as opposed to this moment, you're just living in your house, carrying on your normal duties. You've now been installed as an official of the town, and you have certain other priorities, or bad word, but that are now in play. And by taking the oath sets you apart from being just John Q. Public. And it's not on a Bible, it's not a spiritual type of thing. So I'm not quite sure why the hesitancy not to have everyone take the oath.
Because, because when you think about it, you're dealing with, who is appointed? I guess then we'd have to define who are appointed officials. Because, for instance, you have a recreation committee.
Oh.
You have a recreation committee that changes. You have a veterans committee a sidewalk committee, and if you're saying to all of these people, there are some people, frankly, that may feel, and I thought we had this discussion, but some people that may feel inhibited in some way, intimidated by having to take an oath of office. It may cause them to think, wow, am I going to be liable for something? I just want to help on the rec committee. I want to help the 250 committee, but I have to come and take an oath of office?
What I say is that these are statutorily, they are defined positions in the statutes, Title 24. And they're listed in the town report first as the DRB and the planning board, and then you have annual appointments. That would be the animal control officer, the Bennington County, I don't think the regional commissioner is in there, emergency coordinator, energy coordinator, fire warden, deputies, health officer and deputy health officer, road commissioner, town service officer, and tree warden.
So what you're suggesting is that we would basically define that list, which says annual appointments.
Statutorily.
These are town officer positions.
They are annual appointed officials as opposed to appointed committee members.
Well, advisory or not, they're ad hoc.
Well, I guess my point is we need to be clear on who it is. So if, maybe we need to revise this that says that all appointed officials as listed under the annual appointments.
Well, no, it's actually in statute. It would, or I can get the language. Even there's a handbook for town officers published by the League of Cities and Towns. And these are all, some of these hark back to, well, we got rid of fence viewer and hark back to the 1800s.
Right.
But these surviving town officer positions actually have a legislative.
And I guess that it might make sense so that there's no confusion. That if this is a policy, that we have it very clear that those,
whatever that
officials
specific
as defined by, state statute, blah, blah.
DRB, Planning Commission, and those annual appointments are clearly defined in some fashion.
Defined by statute.
It's kind of going to be all or nothing though, doesn't it? You can't say some are going to be, some's got to take it over, some don't.
That's what we're trying to get to.
We didn't ask VLCT that question, did we?
Didn't ask them what question?
Could we have a policy that the DRB and Planning Commission take an oath without enacting one for all appointed officials?
Well, I personally don't have a problem with everyone that you just listed.
Neither do I.
That is required by statute taking the oath.
No, I don't
My concern was, we talked about appointing rec committee members and veterans committee, and I don't see any reason for those folks having to come in and raise their hand.
All ad hoc.
I'm good with that.
Then let's.
So do we want to amend this policy?
So here's the
Margie's taking the notes.
This is the policy, I don't have a copy of it on my
if I read it, we could say, it shall be the policy of the town of Shaftsbury for the town clerk to administer the oath of office to all appointees to the DRB and Planning Commission and other statutorily defined, and all other statutorily defined town officer positions.
Why does the board have to administer? Why do we have to make people come here in the evening and have us give? Why can't we have the town clerk?
It says
town clerk.
I thought she said, yeah, okay.
Town clerk to administer the oath of office.
Okay.
To the Development Review Board and Planning Commission and all other appointees to statutorily defined positions.
Are we asking this to be done? Well, because these folks are one-year terms. DRB and planning are not annual appointments.
That was the other thing.
So I'm assuming they are only having to take the oath like we do once.
Right.
Is that just a given, or do we need to?
I think that's a given.
It just says it's a given, as a result of appointment or reappointment.
Okay.
We don't define whether it's 1 year.
Okay. All right, so do you want a motion?
I think we should.
To amend the policy of February 13th, 2013. To read, say what Margie just said over here. Which would be,
shall be the
It
policy.
shall be the policy of the town of Shaftsbury for the town clerk to administer the oath of office to all appointees to the Development Review Board and Planning Commission, and all other statutorily, however you, defined town officer positions prior to assumption of duties. Blah, 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 you'll get that from her.
Margie will send it to me, that's hopeless.
I want to make it sure it tracks correctly.
Planning Commission separately from all others.
We don't even have to, I can
Just say all.
just take it out.
Just, why, yeah.
Well, because they're not they're
not statutorily defined.
Of course they are.
Yes, sir.
They are?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Title 24, are you
You
kidding
don't
me?
need to just,
Okay, all right.
Thou shalt have a planning commission.
All right, so I need to, I'll withdraw and
Okay, to all appointees.
change the motion that all appointees, as defined by state statute, will be administered the oath.
amending your,
I withdrew it
I am
because
not
I didn't have a
completely lost.
second, and I just put another one out there.
I'll second.
No, I just
the
erased
other
it
one
all.
that-
Is there any further discussion regarding
What
this
she
matter?
said.
What she said.
Being none, let's vote on approving the, what do we call it, approval policy for appointed officials as amended. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right.
You're gonna take the oath.
Can I, is it official, I can email everybody tonight, just have them do it?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Great.
Please do, thank you. All right. If we're looking to try to have our meetings run in the 3-hour time frame that we mentioned earlier, we have two, the next assignment, we have select board liaison assignments, and we also have the town garage, both of which I think will require some discussion. I don't think that there need to be long, but I'm not sure that we can accomplish both of those, a town administrator's report and do our warrants before 9 o'clock. So I'm going to ask the board, either the question, could we possibly look at tabling the liaison assignments?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
As opposed to running beyond 3 hours?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have a problem? Is there an issue with that, Margie, that you see? Okay. In that case, then we will, Ken, are you good with that?
Yeah.
I just didn't hear you answer, that's the only.
No, I'm sorry. I was digging something else out here.
Okay, so we will table that to our next meeting. All right, then I would like to then, I had charged a little bit, Karen a little bit last week to begin the needed discussion a little bit on things regarding the garage as we look forward. Margie also, I believe, has some financial information for us. And I would guess, I'm going to ask that we spend about 15 minutes on that, if we can do that, if that's sufficient. Hopefully it's sufficient to cover those items and move the project forward, or at least to the our next meeting. All right, Karen, Margie, I'll leave either of you lead on this one.
Margie, I know, was going to try to gather some information in terms of cost to date, our contract. We actually had 2 contracts with MSK. The first one had to do with taking a look at the site development and, you know, how well-suited that particular site was to the project, and that also entailed a survey. We've never actually had a formal survey done of that piece of property. And then the second piece of it was the work that was done to get us to the conceptual drawings and estimates that were presented to the town. And I'm not sure if she's...
Well, we have the contract, they have not billed.
Okay.
For all of their costs, or their contract amounts. We have $11,000 was for the wastewater permitting and survey. So you had an $8,500 base contract, and then you agreed to have a $2,500 amendment for the survey. That was all back in the prior fiscal year.
Right.
That
Right, I'm just
we
looking
authorized
at
all
the
that work.
cost to date.
And then this, we are obligated to MSK for $15,000 for the work done from December through
March.
town meeting.
Yeah. So, you know, I think we've probably all done a lot of thinking about this since town meeting and since last week. We had some really good points that were brought up by a lot of different folks. And what I'm wondering is if we're at a point where we want a town garage committee, not just a facilities committee, which when you think about facilities, it's all of our facilities that we're looking at. And our current facilities committee really ended up, after looking at needs assessments on this in the garage, determining that the garage had the greatest need and that was where they were concentrating their efforts. So it seems to make sense to me, and you know, I'd love for the board to offer their reflections on it, that if we can get together a group of people, and I'm frankly of a mind to ask, at least at the start, specific folks. We had a number of people that came forward with some really good questions, some of which I think had been answered in the course of the project, and we didn't communicate things as well as we could have, obviously. But some that brought up questions that I think are really well worth taking a look at. And I think it's important to bring those folks together to help us figure out how we're going to go forward. I thought that I heard the majority of people, certainly the board, agreeing that we should go forward, take the next step, and see if there's a way we can look at the project, take in some other ideas, kind of flesh those out and see what impact that might have. There is some information that I had talked with the bond bank, Bob Giroux, who is at the bond bank. Indeed, they only are selling the bonds once a year. They don't at all anticipate any bond sales anytime. Again, they'll have a bond sale this summer, and it won't be until next summer. He seemed to indicate to me, I mean, as we look at numbers, that, and when we started to run the numbers, he's projecting that we probably will be at least at a 3.5% interest rate, because it's already begun to move up a bit. But we need to be realistic, he said, that if you're going from a $1.5 million figure to a $1 million figure, say, in the garage, the way that projected out, we might be looking at a penny difference in terms of the tax rate. We're looking at an almost 3-cent increase at the very highest year, and we might save a penny by going down. So, you know, I'm only bringing that forward so that we can have in mind as we proceed that, you know, we can be looking at making, for instance, the buildings smaller, but we also have to be aware of what's the game? Where's the sweet spot, you know? Is it that, you know, if we get to 700,000 and it's only a penny on the tax rate, that maybe people would support that? And yet, when you look at a project like this, which, you know, you might even say this is a once-in-a-generational kind of project for this small town. How do we want to nickel and dime it and say, okay, we won't have the space to cover everything, and we'll save a little bit of money. I don't know what the right amount of money is to save when we're looking out 50 or 60 years. But what I'm hoping is that we maybe can come to a decision on the type of committee that we want, Clearly, communication has to be a very big piece of that. How we, after we gather additional information, how we get that out to the community. And I think it's that committee that needs to make that determination, because it's going to be that group of people that will hopefully go out and get other other folks in. Maybe we have a meeting at each one of the firehouses every month so that different, parts of the community can come together. I did talk with the editor of the Banner. She said she would be very willing. Somebody brought up, maybe it was you, Barry, someone brought up the idea of a column in the Banner, and she was very happy to do that. She said monthly, or however it is that you want to do that. I think that was a terrific suggestion. We need to do a lot of that. And again, I'm not suggesting we self-select members of this committee. We all know it's really hard to get people to volunteer. I do want to, basically grab certain folks and say, listen, you were very concerned about certain pieces of this, and will you come and help us figure it out and determine whether your solutions in your head would really work? And, I'm hoping that if we can get a diverse enough group of folks, because I think, the best decisions come from people who have different ideas, rather than like-minded folks. Although having said that, I think that the past facilities committee was pretty diverse in the way they approached it. But that's kind of what I'm hoping for, and I'm hoping that this committee will set specific times and dates for meetings, so that can be, easily accessible by the community. So you're not kind of wondering, when are they meeting? It's not on an as-needed basis. It's
with some urgency.
Yep. So it probably just took up 10 minutes.
What, for our money that we paid MSK, what have we got have we got a detailed state-approved plan for a septic system?
No. Well, we have the permit to authorize us to drill a well and to then build a septic system in a location.
Do they have a design for the?
No, that comes later.
Yeah,
further in the design process, Ken.
What did we get for our money?
We have 20% design, schematics, we have a site plan, we have
Permits?
contours.
We have all the
permits. Well, we have the wastewater
permit.
Okay, well, I got on the internet, and this is from Armstrong Steel. It is a full steel building. The man tells me you can erect this with a scissors lift. And it's like putting a erector set together. The building is 6,000 square feet. It's 60 by 100. It has 5 12 by 12 overhead doors. It has 1 14 by 14 overhead door. Their price for this building is guaranteed for 50 years. Just the building and the insulation and the plans. They give you a project manager at their office you can call anytime you want to call. He works on a signed list of projects. $60,390.
For an open steel building?
Yep.
Well, we don't.
I mean, this does.
We don't want an open steel building. I mean, does
it's
that?
It's one big.
Well, Kenny, I think it's. I don't know how helpful it is, honestly, to be bringing that. So I think right now, that's fine. I know that the metal buildings were all looked at. Jim Secor used to put up metal buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the sort of thing that hopefully you'll be very much involved in this committee, and you can bring that there, and but I'm not sure how helpful it is to throw something like that out without, I'm looking at a big open, empty building.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to get away from. We're not state.
I think, okay, hold on. That is good information that you brought, but it may be better to, again, a step down the road, next week.
Okay, I mean, what I'm getting at, Craig, is this, that the people, almost out of hand, rejected what was proposed.
No question.
Okay? If you add $7 per square foot concrete cost for this building, with the installation you want, for the snow load you want for this area, you're a little over $100,000.
And there again, I think this is the kind of information that we bring to the table a little bit further down the road.
Okay.
This is the kind of stuff that we as Karen has indicated, if we bring a group of people together, that's exactly the kind of information you bring in. And maybe that's exactly the right answer, or maybe there's reasons that we shoot 50 holes in it. Okay. But that's the information that we bring that comes when you bring, a group of people together, you throw it all in there, you beat the hell out of it, and then you come up with a plan that, your questions are answered. Why that maybe isn't the right answer, but by the same token, somebody else is going to have to answer to you why the other side, it's the same thing, that you come to an agreement. That's what we come to here tonight. It may be premature at this point, because there's other things we need to come to throw that into the pot with it to come to the solution down the road.
Question. Ken.
Yeah.
What do you want us to do with that information tonight?
I'm just throwing it out there as an option that I picked up off the internet.
So what do you want us to do with your option tonight?
I'm just presenting it to you as something that can start from to work to.
Who? Who's you to do it? The board?
The board.
But the board didn't design the project.
No, but
Didn't we talk about last week the idea of having the town support it?
Yeah, and I think the town will support something
enough.
like this.
I understand. So your purpose of bringing it up tonight is to do what?
Is to explain to the board that I don't think it's got to be all that complicated to get a building that can pass.
Okay, that's your point?
Yes.
Good point taken.
Yeah.
That's the sort of stuff that I think needs to come into the committee. And frankly, I know that there were issues that had been raised, for instance, about radiant heat, that it was too expensive, that it seemed, and then, I think even you yourself came to the conclusion after doing some, getting some recommendations and doing some investigation, that indeed that really is the way to go.
Oh, I did.
I mean, you can set a garage, and I think the impression out there was radiant heat. Wow, that's really fancy, that sub Taj Mahal thing, when indeed you're talking about setting a garage at a 45-degree temperature, and the floor is warm, so you don't have to keep the heat pumping, and every time you open the garage door, the heat goes flying out because it's all, up at the top of the building. So, and that's something that, 5 years of research on this stuff led people to a certain place. I'm not saying that that place was right or that place was ever certain. The reason we don't have a formal septic plan or formal designs, I mean, I think it was presented at town meeting or maybe the informational meeting that, and Jim Secor said it, we will entertain, we would have entertained any bid that whether it was pre-engineered steel, or it was cement block, or it was, our own precast plant down here, that gave us a building that met the codes, the energy codes, and the needs that we had.
Right.
So, we may end up with a prefabricated steel building if they can meet the energy codes of Vermont and can have the kind of radiant heating, that pricing, of course, doesn't include radiant heating.
No.
It doesn't include the floor drains we need. It doesn't include the welding. There's a lot, you can say $100,000 and somebody might be out there thinking, wow, they were going to do it for $1.5 million, and Kenny says you can do it for $100,000.
No, I didn't say that.
No, but I'm just saying, that's the impression that people may get, and I think that's why the communication is so important, and the reason why it's vital to have you as a part of this group, and it's vital to have people who came to us and expressed concerns, or those folks that were out there saying, you know what, you have to think about this long-term, it's a huge investment, and you want to make sure that it fits the needs of the town. So without belaboring it, again, I would hope that the board tonight can decide if we want to go forward with a town garage committee, if we want to actually reach out to specific folks that I think we can identify were concerned and had expressed interest. Hopefully, members of our past facility committee will be willing to serve on it. But I think that's a way to get started, and that committee can determine, meetings, when they will meet, specific times, and how they will help us.
I think, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, just the one thing that I want to add to this is I fully support having a committee that's working on this. I think our facilities committee did a great job in terms of flushing out what it was that we needed and finding really the best available option for us. Whether or not we all agree that it was the right option, I think they did a great job of flushing it out. I think there is a little bit of a misconception right now, and I'm going off Kenny's comment a little bit, that the town overwhelmingly turned this down and said we don't need this specific building. While they certainly didn't tell us that we do, I'm not sure that they told us that we don't need it. What I'm certain of that they told us is that we didn't explain to them why they need it. And what I would say is, as we form this committee, one of the goals that I would like to see them have would be to organize certain information in a way that the townspeople can look at it and see exactly what it means to them in terms of, like Karen talked about, the difference in pennies on the tax dollar. We need to outline what fleet vehicles we're looking to put where in a written format that people can look at. I heard so many times we don't need to have all of our equipment in heated storage. The plan was never for all of our equipment to be in heated storage. So where the town got the perception that that's what we were doing, I'm a little lost on. I think we need to be able to show information as far as the return of investment, as you're going to pay X number of dollars to put these pieces of equipment under cover, but if you don't put them under cover, this is what you lose in depreciation. The townspeople need to be able to see these comparisons, and I think if we had had some of these numbers going into the bond vote, we may have seen a very different result. And by all means, I don't want to manipulate any numbers, but I just think that as we look at this committee, we need to not only look at what are all of our options, but whatever option we decide is the way to go. And it may be something the same or very similar to what we looked at before. There needs to be a lot more on how we communicate the specific cost differences.
Yeah. If I may, since our 15 minutes is just about over.
Yes.
And we've heard various things from why we should put together a steel building, which apparently we have a design for already sitting at the end of the table, or why we should communicate better. I suggest that we close off this discussion with something that Karen started with, which was what I would call a reinvention of the Facilities Committee. And I use the word reinvention because I think it sends a signal to the town that we are starting to reinvent where we are going based on what we heard, that we take some of the suggestions that Karen said she perhaps would like to name, that we would sincerely invite to join this garage design committee, and additionally invite the public to continue, that we merely are trying to get names of people that we would invite because we know they share different opinions, one of them being Kenny. Right. But I think we can do that tonight, not that because if we go on talking about what was wrong, how many wiki-ups we might have used instead of the design we had, we're going to go nowhere, and we can do this night after night.
Right.
I think the one real constructive thing that came out this evening is Karen's suggestion of reinventing a garage committee. The facilities committee is gone, identify the people we'd like to invite, and then open it up to the public, perhaps get an article in the banner if they'll print one for us, or even at least a letter to invite the public to join, and move on from there.
Can I just say something briefly? I really do like the idea of doing a garage committee. I can tell you that, I think most people in the town, if they saw the current town garage, would realize that this should be a priority. And that said, I think that there was a pretty serious lack of communication, and there's a lot of misconceptions. There are a lot of folks I talked to out in the hollow that until the article appeared in the paper, had no idea that the town was considering, in their minds, moving the town trucks further away from their problems. And I think that, so you have a whole group of folks that had that misconception, the misconception about heated storage, especially because, you do have a fair amount of folks that are contractors, I had one guy say, well, geez, Milton Caterpillar keeps all their equipment outside. Another issue was a question that had been asked, well, why do we need to protect our equipment if all of it's leased? Now, we all know that not all of it is leased.
Lease purchase.
But there are a lot of these issues, so I would just suggest, and one thing that, and this maybe speaks to the fact that society is very busy and small town democracy is failing, that a lot I heard from a lot of folks was, I'm too busy to go to the meetings, they don't care what I think, and they're going to push it through anyway. And I think that's about as far from the truth as you can get. But I would suggest if you're thinking about doing another committee, that you provide them with a budget. And that one of the first things that the committee is tasked with doing is something simple. Sending a mailing out to all the residents with a business reply envelope, with a highlighted list of, these are some questions, these are some concerns. Would you be in favor of moving the facility to land that we already own? Because some people were under the impression that we were buying land for this project. There was just so much out there. And I think that if this ends up being a $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million project, the incremental cost of spending $1,500 on a mailing or $2,000 on a mailing with business reply envelopes, where people can provide anonymous feedback, would be worth its weight in gold. And I don't know if I have the time to serve on the building committee, but I would certainly be willing to donate all my time to help put together a simple mailing like that if you guys decide that that's something that you have some interest in doing.
Thank you. Barry?
I think I'm glad you called it that and got that positive response. But I don't think it forecloses Michael's suggestion, but I think a lot of thought should go into the articles that appear to make sure, because as was discussed in last week's meeting, I think by Carl and Craig, is the issue is really communication. I mean, the facilities committee has some real experts, and they answered most of the questions that could have been asked. But those questions and answers were not available to the public, as Michael just explained. And I think that was my purpose in suggesting that we have the banner as a vehicle of communication with the town, so they know what what this committee is doing as they're doing it, and to see how they've churned each issue and try to come up with the best solution.
We can't have enough, as was evidenced, we can't have enough communication regardless of medium, and that's...
It's true, and probably the only way we were going to be, because we had a flyer. It has been, you can look at the past town meeting reports for the last 3 years, and there was a report on the town garage. We have had it on our select board agenda for the last year, just about every meeting that we've had. We've had it on camera, we've had, but you never know whether you've done enough until you realize you haven't done enough. Right. And that was, frankly, personally, it was always in my head. We will never know if we did enough until the day of that vote. Now, clearly, we didn't do enough. We spent a decent amount of money on a mailing. And we talked about that as a board, and we determined this was too important a project not to do that. I agree, sometimes I think a survey, I think asking personally people questions can be a really good thing to do.
I think though, there's one thing though that everybody's talking about, and I think it's all relevant, but maybe as important as a garage committee of reinventing that is a communications committee. And not a communications of 5 or 10 people, but a communications of we have 2 or 3 people that will ultimately sit down perhaps with the garage committee, hear what they're saying, and develop a process, because these are a bunch of very good ideas. The board is dealing with those as well as a bunch of other things and can't be consistently focused on it. And neither would a garage committee, because they'd be focused on the design and the costs. But if we had a couple of people that could be our public affairs office, our communications office, whatever title you want to give it, and let them decide whether, and seek those types of feedback from the town. Is the word getting out? If not, or have them contact the banner or any other means of communication, so that we have, if you will, a focal point of people that are interested enough to actually take on that challenge to get the word out, as opposed to us, who would just be simply asking for, what do you guys think? Should we do this? Well, maybe we will. Can we afford that? With the idea of, and again, thank you all for the input, with the idea of moving the process forward, I think that we should, I think that we as a board should take action to redefine the facilities committee as Karen described, so that we could begin the process, include the information, start putting that information like Ken brings and that we get from the community to put it together and start putting this plan. But the bottom line is, regardless of what we do, it may be a year away. It's less than a year now. Because if we're looking to do this again next year, we're under 1 year till the next vote. The time is ticking. This time will go by very fast, so we do need to begin moving forward now.
Well, yeah, because frankly, I would like to see us looking at a November bond vote again. Because if we, if we go back to the community in November and they say no, and we get feedback, it still gives us time to do even something else for a March vote. Right. And still get in under the wire for the municipal bond sales in, because that application has to be in by May 1st.
Right. But how are we going to have the redesign and all that in time for that type of a vote? That's pretty short.
In November?
Yeah.
Well, we did it, I think we can do it.
But it's doable. But
doable.
Ken,
I got one quick comment and then I'm going to shut up. I number one, don't think you need a facilities committee. I think this board can do it. I think this board can take these plans right here, and they will give you every plan you need to build them buildings. And I think the reason, I know I'm new at this, but I don't know why it's got to be dragged out for months and months. Right. You get these, they come right in the mail, you got your numbers. I got another flyer here that came to my house. They will build you a 38 by 40 salt shed for 25 years. You buy the blocks down to Daly's to do the thing. You can build 2 salt sheds. I did quick figures. I won't swear by these, but you can probably build 2 38 by 40 buildings. One to store your summer equipment with a closed end on it. One for an open end for a salt shed for around $25,000 a piece.
I'll respond to that one and then we can move forward. But Part of the thing is, the answer is, how do I say this? We are here and elected to provide guidance for the town. There are some things that we can take the reins and lead. There are other times on things like this where we have to have the community's support and input. If we take the approach, my opinion, if we take the approach that we're going to, this is what we're going to do and run forward with it, we're going to get shut down again.
No, I'm not saying, Craig, that you know, that we're going to take it and you take it or leave it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is one proposal that I found in less than a very few hours on the internet.
Right.
And this is one of, you can have multitudes.
I think there needs to be more people involved. You bring experience in construction, different things than I have. I have my own experience working with construction cost on scale that based on my professional thing. I looked at the numbers just in round numbers that we talked about. Those numbers didn't look bad to me. $100 a square foot for the type of structure we're looking to do based on construction costs that I see nationwide, including here locally.
Yeah.
Just in theory, don't scare me. I didn't think they were, you know, under 100, the actual cost of the main building was under $100 a square foot.
Yeah.
I didn't figure that was all that bad.
Right.
But again, my perspective. But there are people with a lot more experience than I that had a lot more input in that than I did. For that reason, what you bring is one thing that we throw on a table. What we did the first time didn't work. You bring us some solutions, other people are going to bring some solutions back, but the bottom line is we got to have, as Karen indicated, we got to have the community support it. Whether you like it or I like it, or Karen likes it.
I understand that. I didn't, Greg, I had nobody that I talked to anytime tell me that we didn't need the garage. That was never, I never heard anybody say that.
So I think, but the reality is, as I'm seeing it, I think that in order for us to get to where we need to be collectively as a community, we need to have the community involved. Sometimes process is maddening. Sometimes I tend to be impetuous.
I told you, I'm new here.
So for that reason, and that's why I think it's important. Your point's well taken. I think that we need to have a group involved to bring it together, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to move forward. But thank you, I do appreciate your.
Oh, that's all right, that's fine, I understand.
Yeah. All right, so with that said, I would like the board to take action to put together, redevelop the committee, with the idea that to move expediently but efficiently through the next step and move things forward. I think it's my suggestion that we make it an official board action, so for that case, I'd probably like a motion to move us forward in that direction, to reconstitute the facilities committee into, I think you explained it well, Karen, so.
I would move that the board authorize the establishment of the town garage committee. With membership, with outreach to some specific residents in town who had expressed an interest in the future of the town garage, and hopefully expanding the committee from there. I could add to the motion, but if we have a second, we can
Can I
discuss.
ask a question of clarification?
Sure.
Do you intend having the membership of the existing facilities committee?
I was going to say I could extend the motion to say that we, want that they would be the first people, frankly, to reach out to our current facilities committee members.
Have a subsection to deal with community communication, as opposed to just a design of a garage, so that we are inviting people that are not only educated in the technical requirements for what the town needs, but also, for lack of a better term, public affairs people with public affairs experience that can set up a communication program based on what the committee is and that they can then report back to us on suggestions if it's going to cost money. I don't know how to put that briefly, but I'd like to have that subsection so that we have two elements as opposed to just renaming a committee.
Okay. Will you consider that a friendly amendment?
Absolutely. I think that's, critical to the success of this.
Bill?
I'm good.
Ken? All right. If there's no further discussion, we have a motion and a second. I won't restate it. I think Karen and Carl clearly stated our intent to reconstitute the facilities committee into a garage committee with the stipulations that they mentioned. If there's no...
Could I just ask one question?
Yes, you may.
Would it be appropriate to name it instead of the garage committee, the town garage committee?
I thought I said that. I thought I said the town garage.
Okay. So that was the intent, but thank you. All those in favor of establishing or making that change and establishing that committee as suggested, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Just, I wanted to tell you, Ron told me if you did form that committee, he would like to serve on it, so you want to, yeah.
Terrific.
Good.
One of your members.
Karen, will you, I'm going to pick on you again. Will you take the lead in at least doing the initial communications as far as...
Ken, you're on.
Thanks.
I'm not on.
I'm going to volunteer you next, Ken, so...
Michael, you've already said you'll help.
Yeah.
Barry, I know you'll help.
You couldn't keep me off of it.
And then Ron, and Ron's out, obviously, so. All right, so we got a good start.
I had thought to ask John Enders. I mean,
John, definitely, I think would be a very good
Yeah, he would love it.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to task you to start that process, if you will.
I can do that.
Thank you, because I know you also have an interest in it. That's the other reason I'm asking.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing, I know we're way over time here, but...
30 seconds.
We have ended the, the portion of our contract with MSK. The reality is we'll need to determine how and when and if, based on, I guess, what this garage committee comes up with. People can be throwing ideas out like that, like Kenny has. I don't know how to respond to that sort of stuff. And I think to be efficient and effective, the board at some point, fairly quickly, is going to have to determine how much more money will we expend to get us to the next step.
Right.
Because I don't think it's going to be a matter of just, this town garage committee coming up with a plan that may indeed have different numbers or require us to do some, figuring of numbers.
Yeah, there's going to be some redesign going on, and people...
That's right.
People can't work for free.
That's right. That's exactly right. So I'm just putting the board on notice that...
That's something that's going to need to be discussed in the very near future.
Yeah, yeah. And because the town, I think we're all agreeing that the town has, has committed to the idea of our needing a garage. I mean, in spite of the vote, I think the general sense is we need a garage. And certainly over the last few years, they have supported it through tax dollars. We've put it into the budget. So we do have money in there, as we all talked about at the very beginning of this first meeting, for the town garage. So I'm just, again, putting people on notice, so to speak, that that's an issue that will come up.
It's coming.
Yeah, if I could just quickly echo kind of what Karen was saying. I think if there's one thing that we did learn from that vote, the town's a little apprehensive to spend tax dollars, at least for a bond. So I think as members of the committee, whatever the committee ends up being, I think we need to be really careful that we're not spending a lot of money rehashing old ideas. Maybe come up with two distinct theories and pursue them both, run them, bring them back to you guys and say, okay, we've identified two divergent options here, and then you guys can take those options and the checkbook that accompanies your position and go to MSK or whomever we use to delineate those and go back to the taxpayers. And if we do want to do communication, like I mentioned earlier, some part of that is probably going to require a nominal.
I have two procedural questions that don't have to be answered now, but I'm going to put these, I think I want to throw them out to be thought about. One is a timeline to report back to the board, and for what purpose. If you back up, you need at least 30 days warning for an annual meeting or a vote. So I'm thinking 60 to 75 days prior to your day of your vote, you ought to be finalizing your costs. That gets you up to August 15th, thereabouts.
Which isn't far away.
But you're going to need, there's going to be a preliminary phase of this committee where you're going to need a facilitator. Carl's points last week were that how do you make sure the voice of those that were unsettled by this vote are heard? So what mechanism is going to be in place for that? Because you're going to have members of a committee that are fairly vested in the design option that was selected. And, okay, just in a neutral fashion. I mean, and the other, third question is how to assure that there is a chair of the meeting who can commit to being at every meeting. And fourth, is there to be a selectman? I'm assuming, Karen, you would be on it, or is there going to be no selectman?
Well, I want to be on it. I'm sure Kenny, but Kenny has to be on it. And frankly, I think it would be important for all board members to come to as many of these meetings as they can possibly make.
Right. We need to be.
Well, that could also have the same negative implication because we obviously were vested in what we proposed. So that, I mean, people may be inhibited if we have too many of us there.
Well, my hope is that this committee, and that's why we're, I'm talking about buttonholing certain people, that, it's diverse enough that, coming out of this, I think there's going to have to be a lot of give and take.
Right. The members of this board, I have strong faith that the members of this board will come into this with an open mind, all of us, and we throw a lot of stuff against the wall, and when we come away with whatever we come away with here in the next few months, we need to come away with it with the idea that, it may not be exactly what I want, but it's the best, it's what the consensus of the group is.
I wasn't suggesting that anybody from the board would actually be biased. I'm suggesting the perception.
No, I know. I understand that.
I mean,
that's what I'm.
Right.
One thing, though, that you left out, I thought that's very important, Margie, is correct me if I'm wrong, aren't we going to need to spend some money to get Jim Secor's group to come in and educate the people as to what really is there?
Right, that's what I was saying. Yes, what I was saying was once this committee gets together, I think right off the bat, they're going to recognize that there are certain needs that they have, and there'll be a request of this board. That's why I said I'm putting the board on notice.
I'm suggesting if we're reconstituting an entire board, hypothetically, many of the people on this new town garage committee will know very little about it. Who's going to educate them on what has gone forward? I mean, Ken didn't even know various things about it, and he was giving opinions.
That's why it's important to have your current facilities members who can at least carry that discussion out of the gate.
Okay. But I'm sure that there'll be a request coming fairly quickly from this committee for some.
All right. Sorry to cut us off, but trying to work within our.
Cut us off.
I'm cutting you off.
Cut us off.
We have some direction. Karen, like I said, I'm holding you responsible to get us in the next, to kind of get the ball rolling. Yeah. You and Ken. I shouldn't say just Karen.
That's right.
There's two of you. Right. So the two of you will work together to make that happen.
Yeah.
Please.
Check out.
Thank you. I'm sure you will. All right. We have just a couple of additional items to finish up so we can get out of here in 3 minutes. No, I'm not going to say it.
We can get him an alarm clock.
Town administrators report, do you have anything to report to us tonight? Marty, we need to, I mean, obviously you do, but is it, what are the,
The highlights, again, well, Billy hadn't heard. We've got solid waste, transportation matters that we're focusing on, helping the foreman. We're getting ready for the construction season, for ordering trucks, for getting our paving grant, anything to do with requisitioning services for the construction season, as well as trying to finish out the winter. And as you know before, we're working on not only one job description to support me, but I'm working across the board on trying to make sure we're trying to delegate what we can within the existing jobs that we have to clarify some of the administrative support needs.
Okay.
Just to, that's about it. And then I'm going to be curious about how I can help this new garage, town garage committee, how that will morph.
Thank you. Anything else?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
In the interest of being brief.
And that's it. We appreciate it. And like I said, Margie and I, as we discussed briefly, are working through the job description for the new administrative assistant that was approved. We'll be working on that over the next, I'm going to say within the next month. We'll probably have a draft to review and look at to vet it and move it forward so that we can begin the hiring process around, right around mid-year. Other business. Ken.
Remember last week I mentioned about the hour meter readings on the equipment?
Yes.
Do I have to make a motion to try to get something on that, or how would we do that?
We have, that is something that we are going to bring up as we work with Terry. It won't happen overnight, but it'll happen.
Okay, well, I mean, it's just, I didn't know.
No, you don't have to make a motion. It's been brought up and it is on the radar, so we will.
Okay.
And we'll have something back and begin reporting to you. We just haven't yet.
Okay, now they do have time cards, like time clock every week, or no?
Yes, they have time sheets.
Time sheets?
Time sheets, they don't have a time clock?
There's no clock. We don't have those.
Would that be, do you think it would be a decent idea?
Personally, no, I don't think so. 6 of one, half a dozen the other. It really, in my own experience, I've been around and administered both, and there's no difference in the long run.
Okay, my only thought, Greg, was that if you had that, when the guy punched out every day, he could write down the hours on the machines that he had used.
You can do that on a timesheet too.
You can do that on a timesheet. Yeah, the same thing. It's the same. Again, all it is a different method of record keeping.
Okay, but I mean,
it gets exactly the same information.
I'm just thinking of it, like I said, like I told you, for the use of the equipment.
Right. Yeah. Point taken. Thank you. And we we haven't forgotten.
Oh, no, I didn't know. Hey, I'm new here.
No, that's fine.
I'm still learning.
That's fine.
Bill? We're always still
learning.
learning.
I got a couple things. I'll try to be brief here. First is, you talked about expediting meetings quite a bit, and I'm sitting here thinking as I'm looking out in the crowd, and today's not the first day I've seen it. It's just a little over a year since I've been on that side of the table. And I know when you're sitting on that side of the table, a lot of times you don't know when can I talk, when can I not talk. And I've actually sat here and watched a few people tonight be like, does Craig see me? I don't know. And the comment that I have is, maybe as we're looking at our procedures and how we're streamlining meetings, we may want to have a specific procedure for public comment on each agenda item, so that people sitting out there in the seats know, during this time, I'm not gonna sit here and get frustrated that they're not calling on me. Craig's gonna let us know when we can speak and have our piece, and may just alleviate a little frustration, help expedite some things. The two things I brought with me tonight, though, are, one, we had a day, I think it was last week, that the SVSU was just about the only school around here that was open. And I know we don't have control over that, but the one piece that I saw on that and feedback that I heard was that in a lot of parts of town, our roads weren't 100% ready for school bus traffic and people driving. And I definitely saw that I definitely saw that myself too, coming in, going into work that day. And I would just, mention that we may want to just communicate to the road crew not to assume that school's going to be closed or delayed no matter what the weather is. And I'm not sure how that communication typically happens. And I know from feedback that I heard, a lot of time the plows seem to be running a couple hours behind where they normally were. And I know that I saw different trucks on different roads than I usually see them. So I don't know.
Well, they are playing with routes.
Yeah, okay.
Terry's trying to figure out how to make less overlap.
Circuitous, is that?
Yes, he's trying to make the routes more efficient. So
Okay.
you are going to see a shakeup that way.
Okay.
We just talked today about how to make sure he does get notification of a school closing, and then to address your concern, Billy, it turns out the message would come too late anyway, because in order to prepare for rush hour, the guys have to get in by 4.
Yeah. So that's fine. I mean, I just, having heard the feedback from a few different people in the town, and I mean, there was, a lot of buzz on social media and everything else about, I can't believe how our roads look on a school day, that I just want to pass along real quick. And then the last thing that I had was, through all the town garage talk, there's been a lot of talk about how important it is to keep vehicles under cover and how it extends the life of them. When we toured the firehouses in February, one of the things that we found was we now have 4 trucks in the fire department fleet, but 6 bays. So I think it may be worth having Terry and Joe look into, is there room with either of those 2 open bays to take some machines that right now are not under cover or are under the shed that doesn't fully cover them, and get them undercover? Because I know we don't usually think highway department and fire department mix, but it's the taxpayers' dollars all across the board. So if we do have a few
that's the
open
kind of
bays,
stuff that's the kind of information that we need to look for in the committee, and that all of that kind of stuff should all be thrown into that pot.
But I'm saying that's something that realistically, if we have the space, that could be started very soon.
Absolutely.
So.
Michael has
Sorry,
a question.
this may be a benefit for Marty and Terry, but I know SVSU has a routing system that they use for the buses to plan the most efficient routes. We may be able to utilize that, because I assume the town trucks have probably similar turning radiuses and things.
Oh, definitely.
To help us plan routes for clients.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Bill?
No, that's enough for me.
Thank you. Carl?
I do have one little piece, although it's very important. As you all might remember, a couple years ago when we were celebrating our 250th, we placed flags. The 250 committee placed flags along 7A. They really need replacement. And I think, if we're at the point where the town can hopefully take over the cost of doing that. It was contributed the first time. The cost that Jim Meskin, the amount, and that this is a discounted rate, would be $300 to replace the 15 flags, and they would propose to replace them every 2 years based on...
300 total for all 15 of them?
Yes. The brackets and the poles are already there, so I...
Say no more, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it was not a budgeted expense. I think we still might have a little bit left between, the street dance and the 250 to take it out for this year. But I said I cannot believe anyone would have an issue with it, but I will bring it to the board to be sure. But
Can we do it in good weather as opposed to...
Do what in good weather?
Replace them when the weather gets better as opposed to...
Listen, these guys are tough. They will go up there in any kind of weather to get those American flags hanging.
Rain, sleet, or snow.
But we, basically we put them up from Memorial Day through Veterans Day. So.
That kind of expenditure, that doesn't even take board action. I mean, that can...
No, I sort of wanted the town to step up to the plate and say, yes, of course, it's not something the town has done in the past. obviously, this is the first time, you know, we've put.
Have you ever had flags up?
And it's great. I think it's only been very positive reaction, but I
100%
just wanted to bring it forward, and
We need a motion?
I don't
believe
think
we,
need
I
an
don't believe.
option, but I just
No,
wanted
it's
to
well
put it
within
there and your approval.
our budget.
Support. Yep,
Thank you, Karen. Anything further?
that's it.
Marty?
That's it.
Nothing for me. All right, we have no minutes tonight. There was a technical snafu that we ended up not having minutes. We're rebuilding those, so there's none of those. So the last item on the agenda tonight is our warrants.
Thank you all for coming as you're leaving.
We will start doing these first.
Drive safely tomorrow.
I'll tell you right now, we'll do these first, so you don't have to listen.
Mitch Race, I have something here. Here's the third. Check.
All right, first item is, I'll make sure I read this right. This is check warrant. This is the Beamer's.
That's the Beamer's DC warrant.
Where do I see this so I can read these off? I see, oh yes, it says right there. Beamer's DC warrant in the amount of $130.37.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Where did my pen go? Let me use your pen, thank you. I had one vanished. The second warrant, oh there it is, it's under the other. This is
Payroll?
payroll warrant number, where's my number? Oh, it's right there. Payroll warrant 37, there we go. In the amount of $10,082.28.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, approving payroll warrant 37, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Lastly,
Let's see that one. Nope, I don't have it.
we have check warrant 27 in the amount of $38,321.33.
Go over the big, motion to approve.
Second.
Large items over $1,000. We have about $3,700, almost $3,800 of salt, American rock salt, $7,082.92 to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont. About $14,500 to William E. Daley, which is more than likely sand, road sand.
We had sand and shoulder stone and salt
Oh, okay.
on this warrant.
$1,383 to John Ray and Sons for diesel fuel. $2,314.50 to LHS Associates.
How much?
$2,314.
I'd have to go look at an
Who is
invoice
that?
to remember who that is. That might,
These are in order, right? LHS Associates, operating equipment and supplies.
invoices.
Oh, operating equipment and supplies to DCA.
Oh, yes. That's AccuVoting. That's to do with elections.
Okay, election stuff.
Here's Ken.
Ballot costs.
I don't think, let me see it. It's got my name on it, what I got.
$1,500 to MSK Engineering and Design.
That's toward your, yep.
Thanks, that's what.
And $32.26 to VLCT for unemployment insurance. So the rest of them are under $1,000. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor of approving check warrant number 27, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. After signing the warrant, we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Borrow your pen.
You sure can.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, well.
All in favor?
Yeah.